Ryan Kovach's fist connected with James Mitchell's jaw, and the sound echoed across the concrete yard like a gunshot. James didn't fall. He didn't even stumble. He just looked at Kovach with those calm, dark eyes that had seen things most men couldn't imagine, and said quietly, "You just made a mistake you can't take back." Kovach laughed, but something in his gut twisted. The 5 men flanking him tightened their circle around the quiet black inmate they thought was easy prey. They had no idea they'd just attacked a ghost from America's most elite fighting force, a man who'd spent 20 years in places the government still won't name, doing things that would never make the news. In 15 seconds, everything Kovach thought he knew about power would shatter like glass. Before we continue, please subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. Comment below with what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. Now let's get back to what happened next. The cell door buzzed open at 6 a.m., and James Mitchell swung his legs off the bunk before his eyes were fully open. 20 years of military conditioning meant his body woke before his mind muscles tensing, senses activating threat assessment, beginning before conscious thought caught up. No threats, just the familiar smell of industrial cleaner and unwashed bodies, the sound of 200 men starting another day they didn't choose. "Mitchell, you got library duty in 30, the guard called down the corridor. James didn't respond. He'd learned in his first week that responding to guards was optional, but moving when told wasn't. He walked to the sink, splashed cold water on his face, looked at himself in the metal mirror that reflected more shadow than detail. 42 years old, 7 weeks, 2 days into 18 months. Angela used to tell him he looked younger than his age, but Angela was 3 years dead, and mirrors didn't lie anymore. His cellmate's bunk sat empty, transferred 3 days ago to another facility. James hadn't asked why and didn't care. Solitude suited him better than company. 7 weeks ago, he'd stood in a courtroom and listened to a jury foreman say, "guilty," like it was the simplest word in the world. His lawyer had gripped his shoulder, started talking about appeals, about how they'd fight this, about how military service had to count for something. But James had just stood there thinking about Tyler's face when Sarah brought him to visit before sentencing. "Grandpa, are you in trouble?" 6 years old, and already learning that the world didn't make sense, that good people got punished, that doing the right thing sometimes cost everything. James had knelt down, looked into those eyes that reminded him so much of Angela's, and lied. "Grandpa's going to be fine. Just have to go away for a little while." "Because you helped that lady." "Yeah, buddy, because I helped that lady." "But Mom says helping people is good." "It is good." "Then why do you have to go away?" James hadn't had an answer for that. Still didn't. He dressed in the khaki uniform that never fit right, tied his boots with the muscle memory of someone who'd tied combat boots 10,000 times in his life, and walked toward the cafeteria where breakfast waited like a punishment disguised as nutrition. The line moved slow. It always did. Men shuffled forward, grabbing trays, receiving portions that looked like food, but tasted like cardboard and regret. James took his eggs, his toast, his coffee that barely qualified as liquid, and turned to find a seat. That's when he saw Travis Meeks staring at him. Not glancing, staring. The kind of stare that meant something, that communicated intent without words. Travis sat 3 tables away, surrounded by Kovach's crew, and his eyes tracked James like a predator, watching prey decide which direction to run. James held the stare for exactly 2 seconds, not challenging, not submitting, just acknowledging that he saw what Travis wanted him to see. Then he walked to his usual corner table, sat with his back to the wall, and started eating while his mind calculated what that stare meant. 7 weeks without incident. 7 weeks of keeping his head down, staying peripheral, being unremarkable. And now Travis Meeks was staring like James had personally insulted his mother. "You noticed that, right?" Marcus Williams slid into the seat across from James without asking permission. 48 years old, 6 years down with 4 to go, Marcus had appointed himself as James's unsolicited advisor from day 3. "Noticed what?" James said, not looking up from his eggs. "Don't play stupid, brother." Travis, I fucking you, like you stole something from him. That means Kovacs gave the order. Order for what? To mark you, to let you know today's the day you choose. James set down his fork. Choose what? A line or pay. You've been floating too long and Kovacs don't like floaters. Makes other people think they can float too, and then his whole protection racket falls apart. I'm not joining anyone's gang, Marcus. Then you better have tribute ready because they're coming for you today. I can feel it. How much? Marcus laughed without humor. For you. Since you've been holding out this long, probably 300 commissary. Maybe more. Kovacs likes to charge premium for making him wait. I don't have 300. Then you got a problem. James picked up his fork again, forced himself to eat, even though his appetite had vanished. I'll handle it. How you gonna handle 6 men, James? You think you're tough. You think whatever street fighting you know is gonna help when Kovacs and his boys jump you in the yard. James thought about Fallujah in 2006, about clearing houses where every room might contain enemies, about the split-second decisions between shooting and not shooting, about the 20-year career built on being tougher, faster, smarter than everyone trying to kill him. I said, I'll handle it. Marcus stared at him for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. You're not regular, are you? You're something else, something you're not telling. I'm just a guy serving time. Nah, brother. Regular guys don't have eyes like yours. Regular guys don't move the way you move. Regular guys get scared when Travis Meeks stares at them during breakfast. Marcus leaned closer, lowered his voice. Who were you before this place? Nobody important. That's a lie, but I respect your privacy. Marcus stood up, grabbed his tray. Just know this, whatever you were before don't matter in here. In here, you're alone against 6, and alone loses every time. Think about that before yard time. James watched him walk away, then forced himself to finish eating. Fuel was fuel. Training had taught him that emotions didn't change nutritional requirements. The body needed calories regardless of whether the mind wanted them. Across the cafeteria, Travis was still staring. Library duty usually calmed James. Books didn't judge, didn't threaten, didn't require navigation through social hierarchies built on violence and fear. He shelved returns, processed new acquisitions, helped inmates find materials for their GED programs or legal research. Simple work, quiet work. But today, Officer Martinez appeared in the doorway at 7:45, 20 minutes before James's shift ended. Cole, got a minute? James set down the stack of books he'd been sorting. Yes, sir. Martinez looked uncomfortable, kept glancing back toward the corridor like he expected someone to overhear. Walk with me. They moved into the hallway away from other inmates toward a maintenance closet that guards sometimes used for private conversations. Martinez checked both directions, then turned to face James directly. I'm going to tell you something I'm not supposed to tell you, and you're going to listen without asking questions. Understood? Yes, sir. There's radio chatter about an incident planned for yard time today. No specifics, but enough that supervisors are putting extra guards on duty. That means someone important is getting jumped, and I'm betting that someone is you. James's heart rate ticked up to 65 beats per minute. Still calm, but acknowledging the threat. Why me? Because Kovacs has been asking questions about you for 2 weeks. About your background, your conviction, your military service. And when Kovacs asks questions, it means he's planning something. James felt ice slide down his spine. What kind of questions about my military service? What branch, what unit, what you did? The kind of questions that make guards nervous because they suggest Kovacs is doing intelligence work trying to figure out if you're someone he needs to worry about. What did the guards tell him? Martinez met his eyes. Nothing. Your military records are mostly redacted. All we know is you served, you got honorably discharged, and somehow you ended up here for assault. But the redactions made Kovacs more curious, not less. James thought about the Defense Department classifications that had sealed most of his service record about Lieutenant Colonel Rebecca Hayes' phone call 3 months ago, explaining that his Delta Force background would be kept classified to protect him from foreign intelligence services and terrorist sympathizers who might want revenge for operations he'd conducted. Keeping you anonymous keeps you safe, Hayes had said. Apparently not safe enough. Officer Martinez, what do you recommend I do? Martinez hesitated. Skip yard time. Stay in your cell, claim you're sick. Let this blow over. And tomorrow, next week, Kovacs won't stop because I hide today. No, but maybe he'll find another target, someone easier. James shook his head. I appreciate the warning, sir, but I'm not hiding. I'll take my regular yard time. Cole, listen to me. I've been doing this job for 12 years. I've seen what happens when gangs decide to make examples of people. It's not just a beating. It's humiliation, permanent injury sometimes. They'll hurt you bad enough that you'll wish you'd hidden. I understand the risk. Do you? Because 6-on-1 are bad odds even for someone who thinks he's tough. James wanted to tell him that he'd faced worse odds in Helmand Province, that 6 untrained gang members were nothing compared to Taliban fighters who'd been guerrilla warriors since childhood, that his definition of bad odds had been recalibrated by 2 decades of operations most Americans would never know happened. But explanations were dangerous. The more he talked, the more he revealed, and revelation led to attention he couldn't afford. I'll be careful, sir. Thank you for the warning. Martinez sighed, pulled out his radio. Your funeral, but I'm calling for extra supervision during yard time. If something happens, we'll respond fast. I appreciate that. Cole? Martinez's voice stopped him as he turned to leave. Whatever you were before this place, whatever training you have, remember that weapons and backup don't work in here. You're alone. Act accordingly. James nodded, walked back to the library, and tried to focus on shelving books while his mind ran through contingency plans. Scenario 1. Kovacs demands tribute. James pays, problem solved. But James didn't have 300 in commissary, and borrowing meant debt meant obligation. Obligation meant compromise. Scenario 2. Kovacs demands tribute. James refuses, takes the beating hopes guards intervene before permanent damage. Possible, but beatings changed. You marked you as someone who could be victimized. The predators never stopped once they knew you bled. Scenario 3. Kovacs demands tribute. James refuses, defends himself. This meant fighting, which meant solitary confinement, which meant losing good behavior credits, which meant more time away from Sarah and Tyler. Scenario 4. Kovacs demands tribute. James defends himself and wins decisively enough that Kovacs never comes back. High risk, high reward, and completely dependent on James's ability to neutralize 6 men without causing permanent injury that would add years to his sentence. His hands shelved books automatically while his mind war-gamed scenarios, calculated angles, assessed variables. The library phone rang at 8:15. James answered. Library, this is Cole. Dad. Sarah's voice hit him like a physical blow. She wasn't supposed to call during work hours, wasn't supposed to use her phone privileges except during designated times. Baby girl, what's wrong? Why are you calling now? I had a dream last night. Her voice was shaking. A bad dream about you, about something happening to you today. James closed his eyes. Sarah had always been intuitive, even as a child. Angela used to joke that their daughter had inherited James's tactical awareness, but applied it to emotions instead of combat. Sarah, I'm fine. Nothing's happening. Don't lie to me, Dad. I can hear it in your voice. Something's wrong. James walked to the back of the library where no one could overhear. There's some tension here, but I'm handling it. What kind of tension? The kind that happens in prison. Social dynamics, territorial disputes. Nothing I can't manage. Dad, please don't do anything stupid. Please don't fight anyone. Just keep your head down, serve your time, come home. That's the plan. I'm serious. I can't lose you too. Tyler can't lose you. You promised me you'd stay safe. James thought about promises about how many he'd made and broken. Promised Angela he'd always come home from deployments. Cancer didn't care about promises. Promised Sarah he'd be there for her childhood. Deployments didn't care about promises. Promised Tyler he'd teach him to throw a baseball. Federal prison didn't care about promises. I promise, baby girl, I'm going to be fine. You said that before Denver. You said you'd be fine, and then you got arrested. That was different. How How was saving a woman from being beaten to death different from whatever's happening today? James didn't have an answer that wouldn't make her more worried. Dad Tyler keeps asking when you're coming home. He misses you so much. Last night he cried because he forgot what your voice sounds like. I had to play him the voicemail you left before you turned yourself in. James felt his chest tighten. Tell him I miss him too. Tell him Grandpa's counting down the days. Then don't add more days by fighting. Please. Whatever's happening, just take it. Just survive. Your pride isn't worth more time away from us. It's not about pride, Sarah. Then what is it about? James thought about the woman in Denver, about her screams, about the 15 people who'd walked past that alley without stopping. He thought about the principle that had guided his entire military career: protect those who can't protect themselves, stand up to bullies, do what's right, regardless of personal cost. It's about being able to look at myself in the mirror. I don't care about mirrors, Dad. I care about you being alive and coming home. I will come home. I promise. Stop making promises you might not be able to keep. The line went quiet for a long moment. James listened to his daughter breathe, heard the fear she was trying to hide, felt the weight of every choice he'd ever made that had led to this phone call. I love you, baby girl. I love you too, Dad. Please be smart today. The phone clicked off. James stood there holding the receiver, staring at nothing, feeling the ghost of his daughter's fear wrap around him like chains. Connor Murphy walked past the library entrance for the 4th time in 30 minutes. Each time he slowed down, looked inside, made eye contact with James like he was memorizing his position. The 4th time he stopped, completely, leaned against the doorframe, smiled. Nice morning for reading, ain't it, Cole? James didn't respond, just continued sorting books. I said it's a nice morning. Connor's smile widened. You deaf or just rude? I'm working. Yeah, I can see that. Working real hard putting books on shelves. Important stuff. Connor took a step inside. You know what else is important? Showing respect when someone talks to you. James set down the book he was holding, turned to face Connor directly. I'm showing respect by not wasting your time with conversation. You clearly have somewhere to be since you've walked past here 4 times in half an hour. Connor's smile faded. You counting how many times I walk past? That's weird, brother. That's stalker behavior. Situational awareness isn't stalking, it's survival. Survival, Connor laughed. Listen to this guy. You think you need to survive in the library? You think books are dangerous? I think people who repeatedly scout locations before committing actions are dangerous. I think being scouted means I'm a target, and I think you should deliver whatever message you're here to deliver and move on. Connor's expression shifted from mocking to genuinely surprised. You're smarter than you look. Most people are. Kovacs wants to talk to you. Yard time, 1:30. Don't make him come looking for you. I'll be there. I take yard time every day. Yeah, but today's different. Today, you're not just taking yard time. Today, you're accepting an invitation from someone who don't like being ignored. Connor stepped closer, lowered his voice. And between you and me, you should bring whatever commissary you got. Might make things go smoother. I don't have commissary to spare. Then you got a problem because Kovacs don't accept IOUs. He wants payment up front and he wants it today. Payment for what I haven't asked for protection. Connor laughed again, that harsh sound that echoed in the small library. You don't gotta ask for protection in here, brother. Protection's automatic. You're breathing Kovacs' air, walking Kovacs' yard, eating in Kovacs' cafeteria. That's all gotta cost. I'm in federal prison. Everything here belongs to the federal government. You keep thinking that. See how far it gets you. Connor turned to leave, paused at the door. 1:30 Cole. Kovacs don't like waiting, and you really don't want to make him wait twice. James watched him walk away, then returned to his books while his mind processed new information. They were coming for him today. No more waiting, no more avoiding, no more pretending he could stay invisible until his sentence ended. The confrontation was inevitable now. Marcus found him again during lunch, sliding into the seat across from James without preamble. You hear about Jenkins? James looked up from his tray. Who's Jenkins? Was a guy here 2 years ago. Army veteran, served in Iraq. Kept to himself like you didn't want gang affiliation, thought he could just do his time and leave. Marcus's voice dropped. Kovacs made an example of him, beat him so bad he couldn't walk for 3 months. Guards said it was self-defense, said Jenkins threw the first punch, but everyone knew the truth. What happened to Jenkins? Transferred to medical facility, spent 6 months recovering, came back different, broken. Started paying tribute, started doing whatever Kovacs wanted, lost himself completely. Marcus leaned forward. 2 months after he came back, someone found him in his cell. He'd used his bedsheet. James felt cold spread through his chest. Suicide. Called it that. But I think it was murder, just slower. Kovacs killed his spirit first. His body just caught up later. Why are you telling me this? Because you remind me of Jenkins. Same look in your eyes, same way of carrying yourself like you've seen combat, same stubborn independence that Kovacs sees as disrespect. Marcus's eyes held genuine concern. And I don't want to find you in your cell 6 months from now. I'm not Jenkins. No, what makes you different? James thought about the difference between Army and Delta Force, between regular combat training and 20 years of elite special operations, between someone who'd seen combat and someone who'd lived in it. I just am. Marcus studied him for a long moment. You got training, don't you? Real training. The kind they don't teach in regular military. James didn't respond. That's what I thought. Well, let me tell you something about training, brother. Training's great when you got weapons and backup and rules of engagement. In here, you got none of that. In here, it's just you against however many Kovacs brings, and he'll bring enough to make sure you lose. How many did he bring for Jenkins? 8. Today, he'll bring 6. Marcus blinked. How do you know that? Because Connor Murphy spent the morning scouting me, and I counted the number of times he looked back to communicate with others watching. 6 signals, 6 men. You counted signals. I count everything. Marcus sat back, something like respect mixing with worry in his expression. Okay, so you know they're coming. What's your plan? Take my regular yard time, see what happens. That's not a plan that's suicide. It's the only option that doesn't involve hiding or submitting, and I don't do either. Pride's gonna get you killed. It's not pride, Marcus, it's principle. Principle looks a lot like pride when you're bleeding on concrete. James pushed his tray away, appetite gone completely now. When I was in the military, I made a promise to myself. Never submit to bullies, never let fear make my decisions, never be the person who stands by and does nothing when action is required. I've kept that promise for 42 years and I'm not breaking it today. Even if keeping it cost you everything. Especially then. Marcus shook his head slowly. You're either the bravest man I've ever met or the dumbest. Haven't figured out which yet. Maybe both. Yeah, maybe both. Marcus stood, grabbed his tray. For what it's worth, I hope you make it through today. You're a good man, James Mitchell. This place needs more good men. Thank you, Marcus. Don't thank me. Thank whoever's watching over you, because you're gonna need divine intervention at 1:30. James sat alone after Marcus left his mind, finally quiet, his decision made. He thought about Sarah's voice on the phone, about Tyler's face, about Angela's last words before the cancer took her ability to speak. Be brave, James. Be brave for me. He'd been brave in Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and a dozen other countries whose names remained classified. He'd been brave in Fallujah when his team was pinned down by insurgents. He'd been brave in Helmand when they'd been ambushed and outnumbered 3-1. He could be brave today. 1:30 approached like an execution scheduled on a calendar. James walked toward the yard with steady steps. His breathing controlled his heart rate, still 60 beats per minute. Guards watched him pass, and some looked away like they didn't want to see what was coming. Others watched with the morbid interest of people grateful the violence wasn't directed at them. Officer Martinez stood near the yard entrance, radio in hand, expression grim. Last chance, Cole. You can turn around, go to medical, claim illness. I'm not sick, sir. You will be in about an hour. Maybe, but I'll be standing when it's over. Martinez studied him for a long moment. You're not regular, are you? I'm just a man serving time. No, you're something else, something dangerous. Martinez stepped aside. Let him pass. Guards will respond fast. Try not to kill anyone before we get there. James walked into the yard and immediately felt the atmosphere wrong. Too quiet. Too tense. Men scattered throughout the space, but their positions seemed deliberate, like they'd created a stage and were waiting for the performance to begin. The basketball game continued, but players kept glancing toward the weight pit. The perimeter walkers had thinned to almost nothing. Even the loudest inmates had gone quiet, their usual shouting and laughter replaced by expectant silence. James walked to his usual spot back against the brick wall, clear sight lines in 3 directions. His training automatically cataloged details his conscious mind didn't need to process. Guard positions, escape routes, potential weapons, crowd dynamics. Then he saw Ryan Kovacs stand up from the weight bench, and everything else faded to background noise. Travis, Derek, Billy Connor, and Wayne stood with him, 6 men just like James had predicted. They moved across the yard with purpose, not hurrying, but not casual either. Other inmates created space, the crowd parting like water around a boat. James's training whispered warnings. Elevated threat level, multiple hostiles, attack imminent. Prepare for contact. His heart rate stayed at 60. His breathing remained steady. His posture relaxed but balanced, weight distributed for quick movement if necessary. 20 feet away, 15, 10. Kovacs smiled, and it was the smile of someone who thought he'd already won. 5 feet. James Mitchell. Kovacs' voice carried across the yard like an announcement. We haven't properly introduced ourselves. I'm Ryan Kovacs. This here's my crew. We run things at Ridgemont. James said nothing. You've been here almost 2 months now. That's long enough to understand how things work. Everyone aligns with someone. Everyone pays respect to the people who protect them. But you've been ignoring those rules. I haven't broken any rules. I keep to myself, do my job, serve my time. Keeping to yourself is the problem, Travis said. Makes people think you don't respect the hierarchy. James's eyes shifted to Travis, noted his position, cataloged his threat level, returned to Kovacs. Here's how it works, Mitchell. Kovacs stepped closer. You align with someone for protection, or you pay tribute to someone for protection. Since you're black, you should probably align with Williams and his people. But if you want to stay independent, you pay us. I'm not paying anyone anything, and I'm not aligning with anyone. Kovacs' jaw clenched. That's not how it works. That's how it works for me. Around them, over 100 inmates had stopped their activities to watch. The yard had gone completely silent, except for the wind and the distant sound of traffic beyond the walls. You're making a serious mistake, Mitchell. You can't survive in here alone. I've survived worse environments than this. Worse environments, Travis laughed. You think the streets are tougher than prison? James thought about Fallujah during the bloodiest month of the surge, about Helmand Province, where every step might trigger an IED about operations, in countries so dangerous that mentioning their names would violate national security. I'm saying I can take care of myself. Kovacs moved closer now, within arm's reach. Nobody takes care of themselves in here. You submit to protection or you get hurt. Those are your only 2 options. There's a third option. You leave me alone. That's not happening. Then we have a problem. Kovacs smiled, showing too many teeth. Yeah, we do. And you're about to find out what happens to people who think they're too good to follow the rules. He placed his hand on James's chest. The gesture was meant to intimidate, to establish dominance, to show everyone watching that Kovacs could touch James without consequence. James looked down at the hand, then back up at Kovacs' face. Remove your hand. Or what? Or I'll remove it for you. The crew laughed. The sound carried across the silent yard like bells announcing something terrible. You're going to remove my hand, Kovacs said mockingly. You and what army, in case you haven't noticed, friend? You're alone and we're 6. Numbers matter less than skill. We'll see about that. Kovacs' expression shifted, then something calculating entering his eyes. He leaned closer, lowered his voice so only James could hear. You know what's funny, Mitchell? I know who you are. James felt ice slide down his spine. That's right. Took me 2 weeks, but I got sources outside these walls. Made some calls, asked some questions. Most of your records redacted, but I got enough. Kovacs smiled. You're Delta Force, 20 years special operations, classified missions in countries the government won't admit we operate in. You're a trained killer, Mitchell, a ghost, a weapon. James's expression didn't change, but his mind raced. Kovacs knew, had known for weeks, which meant this wasn't about territory or tribute. This was about ego. So here's what's going to happen, Kovacs continued quietly. I'm going to beat you in front of everyone here. Not because I think I can, but because I need to. Because if I let a Delta Force operator walk through my yard without paying tribute, everyone's going to think I'm weak. They're going to think I'm scared of you, and I can't have that. Walk away, Kovacs. You know what I'm capable of. I do. That's why I brought 5 men instead of 3. That's why we're going to hit you fast and hard. That's why I'm willing to spend 30 days in solitary for this. Kovacs' smile widened. Because humiliating you is worth whatever punishment I get. James understood now. This wasn't about winning. This was about Kovacs' pride, his need to prove that even elite special operators could be beaten in his world, his need to show everyone watching that prison rules mattered more than military training. Last chance, James said quietly. Walk away. Tell your crew to let go. We both forget this happened. No chance. Kovacs raised his voice so everyone could hear. You think you're special, Mitchell. You think 20 years playing soldier makes you better than us. Let me tell you something about your training. It don't mean shit in here. No weapons, no backup, no rules of engagement, just you against us. And you're about to learn that real fighters don't need no military to teach them how to hurt people. Travis and Derek moved in from the sides, grabbed James's arms, held him in place. Classic gang tactics. Immobilize the target. Let the leader establish dominance through violence. James didn't resist yet. His training had taught him to choose his moments to let enemies commit to actions before revealing capabilities. Kovacs drew back his fist, and James made his final calculation. Sarah's voice on the phone. Please don't fight. His promise. I'm going to be fine. Angela's last words. Be brave. Tyler's question. Are you in trouble, Grandpa? The woman in Denver screaming while 15 people walked past. The principle that had guided his life, protect those who can't protect themselves, stand up to bullies, do what's right regardless of personal cost. Kovacs' fist came forward, and in that frozen moment before impact, James Mitchell made his choice. Not for pride, not for ego, not even for self-preservation. But because submitting to Kovacs today meant every bully in every prison would think they could victimize anyone without consequence. Because letting fear make decisions meant surrendering the principle that made him who he was. Because sometimes the right choice cost everything, and you paid that cost anyway. The fist connected with James's jaw pain, exploding through his face, and somewhere in the guard tower, Officer Martinez was shouting into his radio for backup that would arrive too late. James tasted blood, felt his knees buckle slightly, heard Kovacs laugh in triumph. And then, James stopped pretending to be weak. The second punch never landed. James's left hand came up, caught Kovacs' wrist, mid-swing and twisted with precise force that made Kovacs' eyes go wide. 20 years of close-quarters combat training compressed into one fluid motion. James rotated Kovacs' arm outward, hyperextending the elbow joint, just enough to cause pain without breaking bone, and used the leverage to spin Kovacs' body between himself and Travis. "What the hell?" Travis shouted, his grip on James's right arm loosening in surprise. James didn't give him time to recover. His right elbow snapped backward into Derek's solar plexus with surgical precision, hitting the nerve cluster that controlled the diaphragm. Derek's breath exploded out of him in a sound like a punctured tire, and his hands released James's left arm as his body's autonomic response overrode conscious control. 1.5 seconds elapsed. 2 attackers neutralized. Travis tried to reestablish his grip, reaching for James's throat with both hands. Amateur move. Telegraphed. Desperate. James caught the reaching arm, stepped into Travis's space, and applied a standing armbar that hyperextended the elbow joint past its natural range. Travis screamed a high-pitched sound of genuine pain and shock, and James used the leverage to spin him into Billy, who was charging from the left. Both men tangled, stumbled, went down in a heap of limbs and confusion. 3 seconds total, 4 attackers disrupted. Connor came from the right, throwing a wild haymaker that had power but no technique. James slipped it with minimal head movement, the fist passing so close he felt the air displacement. Connor's momentum carried him forward off balance, committed to a trajectory he couldn't arrest. James's foot swept Connor's lead leg at the precise moment when all his weight transferred forward. Physics did the rest. Connor pitched face first into concrete, and the sound of his nose breaking echoed across the silent yard like a branch snapping. Blood sprayed across the ground, and Connor rolled onto his side, hands clutching his face, making sounds that were half scream, half sob. 4 seconds. 5 attackers down or disrupted. Wayne and Kovacs remained standing, but both had stopped advancing. Something in their expressions had shifted from predatory confidence to genuine uncertainty. Around them, the entire exercise yard had gone completely silent. Over 100 inmates watching in shocked disbelief as the quiet black man they'd dismissed as easy prey dismantled Kovac's crew with surgical efficiency. In the guard tower, Officer Martinez was shouting into his radio. Code yellow yard, conflict in progress, need immediate backup and medical to the exercise yard. But backup was still 30 seconds away, and 30 seconds was an eternity in combat. Wayne recovered first, his face twisting with rage and embarrassment. He charged like a linebacker, arms outstretched, trying to tackle James against the brick wall. James waited until Wayne committed fully to the trajectory, then sidestepped at the last possible instant. Wayne's momentum carried him forward into nothing but air and wall, his face impacting brick with enough force to split his eyebrow and daze him completely. He slumped to the ground, conscious but not functional. 6 seconds total. 6 attackers neutralized. Only Kovacs remained standing now, his expressions cycling through emotions so fast James could read each one. Confusion at how quickly his advantage had evaporated. Fear at facing James alone. Rage at the humiliation happening in front of everyone. And underneath it all, something else. Recognition. "You're holding back," Kovacs said, his voice barely above a whisper. James said nothing, just maintained his ready stance, balanced and prepared. Those moves, that precision. You could have broken bones, could have killed us, but you're pulling every strike, controlling every joint lock. Kovac's eyes narrowed. Why? Because murder adds decades to my sentence, and I want to go home to my grandson. So you're just going to embarrass me instead. Make me look weak in front of everyone. You did that yourself when you decided 6-on-1 was fair odds. Kovac's jaw clenched. Behind him, Travis and Billy were untangling themselves, getting to their feet. Derek had recovered enough breath to stand, though he was still gasping. Connor remained on the ground, blood pooling beneath his face. Wayne leaned against the wall, dazed and bleeding. "This ain't over," Kovacs said. "It should be. Your crew's hurt. Guards are coming. You've already lost." "I don't lose in my yard." Travis staggered forward, his left arm hanging at an odd angle where James had hyperextended the elbow. "Boss, maybe we should—" "Shut up." Kovacs didn't take his eyes off James. "Get your ass over here. Billy, Derek, form up." The 3 men moved into position, creating a triangle around James. All of them hurt now, all of them moving more carefully, all of them understanding they'd miscalculated badly. But Kovac's pride wouldn't let him stop. "You think you're smart, Mitchell. You think taking down my boys makes you king of this yard. I think it makes me someone you should have left alone. See, that's where you're wrong." Kovacs smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Because now everyone's watching. Everyone's seeing you fight. And when guards get here, they're going to ask what happened, and all these witnesses are going to say the same thing. That you attacked me. That we tried to break up a fight you started. That you came at us violent and crazy. That we were defending ourselves when you went berserk." James understood then. Kovac had planned for this contingency, had positioned witnesses, had created a narrative that would survive official investigation. Martinez saw everything from the tower. Martinez will write what he saw, and what he saw was a fight in the yard. He's too far away to hear who said what, who started what. It's your word against 6 of us, and you're the one with military training that the prosecutor already called dangerous. James's mind raced through implications. Kovacs was right. Even justified self-defense could be twisted into aggression if enough people lied convincingly, and a prison hearing wouldn't have the same standards as a criminal trial. The warden could add time to James's sentence based on preponderance of evidence, not proof beyond reasonable doubt. "So here's how this ends," Kovacs continued. "You submit right now. You get on your knees, you apologize for disrespecting me, and you agree to pay double tribute going forward. Do that, and I tell guards this was all a misunderstanding. Refuse, and I make sure you get 6 months added to your sentence. Or I finish what you started and make sure you can't lie to anyone." Kovacs laughed. "You gonna knock out everyone watching? You gonna silence 100 witnesses? Be realistic, Mitchell." James calculated odds, variables, consequences. Kovacs was right about the witnesses, wrong about everything else. "Tell your boys to stand down, Kovacs. Last chance." "No chance." Kovacs charged, and Travis and Billy came from the side simultaneously. Derek circled to cut off retreat. They moved with more coordination, now having learned from watching their crew fall. They'd adjusted tactics, understood that James was dangerous, and committed to overwhelming him through simultaneous attack. James had fought worse odds in Helmand Province. Travis came from the left, Billy from the right, Kovacs straight ahead. James dropped his weight, making himself a smaller target, and Travis's grab missed high. James's palm strike caught Travis in the sternum, not hard enough to stop his heart, but hard enough to disrupt rhythm and send him stumbling backward, gasping. Billy's tackle connected arms wrapping around James's waist, trying to bring him down through weight and momentum. James let himself fall backward, but controlled the fall, turned it into a sacrifice throw that used Billy's own momentum against him. They hit the ground with Billy on bottom, James on top, and James's elbow drove into Billy's ribs with enough force to crack at least one. Billy's arms released immediately, his body curling into protective fetal position. Kovacs grabbed James from behind while he was still on the ground, trying to apply a rear naked choke. Amateur technique, arm placement, wrong leverage, insufficient. James tucked his chin, protecting his airway, and drove his head backward into Kovacs's face. Cartilage crunched, blood sprayed, and Kovacs's grip loosened. James rolled away, came to his feet, and found Derek charging like a bull. No technique, just rage and mass. James sidestepped, used Derek's momentum to guide him past, and delivered a precise strike to the kidney that dropped Derek to his knees, vomiting from pain. 8 seconds since the second engagement began, all attackers neutralized again. Kovacs stood 20 feet away now, blood streaming from his broken nose, his eyes wild with something beyond rage, something closer to panic. "You're done, Kovacs. Stay down." "I'm not done. I'm never done." He came again, this time with technique James recognized from boxing training. Jab-cross-hook combination, actually competent for a prison fighter. James parried the jab, slipped the cross, and stepped inside the hook, closing distance, until they were chest to chest. Kovacs tried to use his size advantage, wrapping James in a bear hug, meant to crush ribs and establish dominance through brute strength. Worst possible decision. James's forearms came up between them, broke the grip through precise angles that negated strength advantage, and trapped Kovacs's right arm against his own body. Basic shoulder lock, the same one James had used to control insurgents in Fallujah when taking prisoners alive, mattered more than killing them. Kovacs went to his knees, his shoulder joint at an angle that put excruciating pressure on tendons and ligaments. "Submit." "Never." James applied incremental pressure enough to demonstrate he had complete control. "Submit or I dislocate your shoulder." "Do it." "Go ahead. Add assault to your record. Add more time. See if I care." James held the position, his mind calculating. Kovacs wanted him to cause permanent injury, wanted evidence of excessive force, wanted ammunition for the disciplinary hearing. "Guards are 10 seconds away, Kovacs. This is over." "It's not over until everyone knows you're just another violent criminal who can't control himself." James understood then. This wasn't about tribute or territory or even ego. This was about destroying James's credibility, about ensuring that even if James won the fight, he'd lose everything else. "Why?" James asked quietly. "Why do you care this much about one inmate?" Kovacs smiled, despite the pain blood from his broken nose running into his mouth. Because men like you think you're heroes. Think your military service makes you better than us. I'm going to prove you're not. I'm going to prove that when you're backed into a corner, you're just as violent and dangerous as the prosecutor said. I'm defending myself. That's what they all say. That's what you said in Denver, right? Self-defense. Defense of others. But those 3 guys still ended up hospitalized. James felt cold spread through his chest. How do you know about Denver? I told you I got sources. Made calls, asked questions. Found the woman you saved, tracked her down, talked to her. You did what? Had someone on the outside pay her a visit. Ask some questions about that night. About what really happened before you showed up. James's hands tightened on the shoulder lock. If you or anyone you know touched her, relax, hero. We didn't touch her, just asked questions. And you know what she said? Kovacs' smile widened. She said those 3 guys were just drunk and stupid. Said they were harassing her, yeah, but she didn't think they were really going to hurt her. Said you escalated everything that you came in swinging before anyone pulled a weapon. That's a lie. Is it because she sounded pretty sure when she gave her statement to my friend? You're trying to reopen my case. I'm trying to show everyone that you're not some noble warrior. You're a violent man who uses excessive force, who can't control himself, who belongs in here just like the rest of us. James released the shoulder lock, stepped back, created distance. His hands were shaking now, not from fear, but from rage, barely controlled. Why? What does destroying me accomplish? Kovacs got to his feet, cradling his injured shoulder. Because I'm sick of people like you getting sympathy, getting clemency petitions, getting treated like victims when you're the ones who chose violence. You think you're special because you wore a uniform. You think Delta Force makes you better than me? We're the same Mitchell. We both hurt people. I'm just honest about what I am. We're nothing alike. No. You put 3 men in the hospital, I put people in hospitals. You've killed in combat, I've killed in prison. The only difference is you get called a hero and I get called a criminal. The difference is I fought for my country against enemies who wanted to destroy it. You fight for yourself against anyone who threatens your ego. Keep telling yourself that. Meanwhile, I'm going to make sure you serve every day of your 18 months, plus whatever gets added for this fight. And when you get out, I'm going to make sure that woman in Denver presses new charges, claims you coerced her testimony, files a civil suit that takes everything you have left. James looked at him at the blood and the hate and the desperate need to bring others down to his level, and felt something shift inside himself. You can't win this, Kovacs. Even if you destroy me, you're still you. You still wake up knowing what you are, and that's a worse prison than any building they can lock you in. Kovacs' face twisted with rage, and he charged again, abandoning all technique, just raw fury and hate. James could have ended it there. 1 strike to the throat, 1 knee to the head, 1 joint break that would take Kovacs out of the fight permanently. His training gave him a dozen options for inflicting maximum damage with minimal effort. But Sarah's voice echoed in his head. Please don't do anything stupid. Just keep your head down. Tyler's face when he'd asked if Grandpa was in trouble. Angela's last words about being brave, the principle that had guided his life. James chose restraint. He caught Kovacs' wild punch, redirected momentum, and took him to the ground with a technique that controlled without injuring. Kovacs struggled, screamed, tried to bite and scratch like a cornered animal. You're pathetic, Kovacs spat. You could hurt me, but you won't. Because you're weak. Because you care what people think. I care about being able to look at myself in the mirror. Mirrors don't matter in prison. Only power matters. Only fear matters. Then you've already lost because I don't fear you. Guards arrived then, 6 of them flooding into the yard with batons drawn and radios crackling. Officer Martinez led them, his face grim as he assessed the situation. Everyone on the ground now. James released Kovacs, immediately dropped to his knees, placed his hands behind his head. Trained compliance, military discipline, overriding every instinct to run or fight. Kovacs stayed on the ground where he'd fallen, blood streaming from his nose, cradling his shoulder. Travis, Billy, Derek, Wayne, and Connor were scattered across the concrete in various states of injury and consciousness. Martinez knelt beside James, spoke quietly. Cole, you need to tell me exactly what happened here. They attacked me, 6-on-1, I defended myself. That's it. You're telling me one man did this to 6 gang members in self-defense? Yes, sir. Martinez looked at the scene, at the positioning of bodies, at the efficiency of injuries. What kind of training do you have, Cole? The kind that teaches restraint. Every one of them will recover fully, no permanent damage. That's not what I asked. James met his eyes. I know, sir. Warden Morrison arrived minutes later, pushing through the crowd of inmates who'd been held back by additional guards. Her face was thunderous as she surveyed the carnage. Someone want to explain what the hell happened in my yard? Martinez stood, his radio still in hand. Ma'am, I observed from the tower. Kovacs and his crew surrounded Cole, appeared to issue threats, then initiated physical assault. Cole was restrained by 2 gang members, while Kovacs struck him multiple times. Then Cole defended himself. Defended himself, Morrison repeated slowly, looking at the 6 incapacitated gang members. This is defense. Ma'am, I watched the entire encounter. Cole didn't initiate contact, didn't throw the first punch, didn't escalate until after being physically assaulted. What happened after that was the most controlled defensive response I've ever witnessed. Morrison walked to where James knelt, studied him for a long moment. Cole, how many years did you serve? 20, ma'am. What branch? James hesitated. I asked you a question, inmate. Army, ma'am. Special operations. How special? Before James could answer, a woman's voice cut through the yard. Warden Morrison, I need to speak with you immediately. Everyone turned to see a black woman in civilian clothes striding across the yard, her posture radiating military bearing despite the lack of uniform. She carried credentials in her hand, and guards moved aside automatically. James's heart sank. He recognized her immediately. Lieutenant Colonel Rebecca Hayes. They'd worked together 5 years ago on a joint task force operation in Afghanistan. She'd been the liaison between Delta Force and conventional Army units, coordinating operations that required both elite operators and regular forces. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, Morrison said, her voice carrying surprise. What brings Defense Department liaison to my prison yard? I'm here about Marcus Cole. Hayes stopped beside James, looked down at him with an expression James couldn't read. Or should I say James Mitchell, former Delta Force commander, 20 years special operations, multiple combat deployments, classified missions in 7 countries. The yard went silent. Kovacs, being helped to his feet by guards, went pale. Morrison's eyes widened. Delta Force. One of the best operators I've ever worked with, Hayes said. Served with distinction, earned medals he's not authorized to display, conducted operations that saved American lives, and will remain classified for another 30 years. Then what the hell is he doing in federal prison? Hayes pulled out a tablet, called up files. 18 months ago, he intervened in an assault outside a bar in Denver. 3 men were beating a woman. Mitchell attempted de-escalation, but when one assailant pulled a knife and another slammed the woman's head into concrete, he responded with force. All 3 assailants hospitalized. The woman survived. Prosecutor argued excessive force used Mitchell's military training against him, convinced a jury that his skills made him dangerous rather than disciplined. Morrison looked at James, something like understanding dawning in her eyes. And you just took down 6 gang members without causing serious injury. He was holding back significantly, Hayes said. What you witnessed was probably 10% of his actual combat capability. If he'd wanted to, every one of those men would be dead or permanently disabled. Instead, they'll all recover fully. Kovacs found his voice, though it came out weak. He attacked us. We were defending ourselves. Hayes turned to him, her expression cold. Ryan Kovacs, 8 years served of a 15-year sentence for armed robbery, leader of an unofficial Aryan gang that's been the subject of 3 federal investigations for hate crimes and organized violence. You attacked a retired special operator who was trying to serve his time quietly, and you got exactly what you deserved. I got rights. I got witnesses. You have the right to remain in custody while I report this incident through military channels. Mitchell is still subject to certain military protocols regarding his classified service history. Attacking him may constitute an offense under federal statutes protecting retired intelligence personnel. Kovach's face went from pale to gray. He ain't active duty. He ain't protected. Actually, anyone with his level of classification remains under certain protections for life. Congratulations, Kovach. You just made yourself a federal case. Martinez spoke up. Colonel Hayes, for my report, I need to understand something. How did one man take down 6 attackers in approximately 15 seconds without causing fatal injuries? Hayes smiled grimly. Because James Mitchell spent 20 years learning how to neutralize threats with the minimum necessary force. He's not a brawler, Officer Martinez. He's a surgeon who operates on human violence. What you witnessed was precision combat medicine. Morrison crossed her arms. Colonel, I appreciate the background, but this doesn't change the fact that we have a violent incident in my facility that resulted in multiple injuries. I understand, Warden, which is why I'm here to request immediate protective custody for Mitchell and to discuss his security classification going forward. You want me to protect him? He just proved he can protect himself better than my guards. The issue isn't his ability to protect himself. It's the target this incident just painted on him. Within hours, every inmate in this facility will know who he is. Some will want to test themselves against him. Others will see him as a threat. His anonymity is gone, and that makes protective custody necessary. James spoke for the first time since Hayes arrived. Ma'am, I don't want special treatment. Hayes looked down at him. Too late, Commander. You stopped 6 gang members in front of 100 witnesses. Your anonymity ended the moment Kovach decided you were worth attacking. I just want to serve my time and go home to my family. I know, and I'm going to help make that happen. Hayes turned back to Morrison. Warden, can we speak privately? There are aspects of Mitchell's case that require discussion outside the hearing of other inmates. Morrison nodded. Cole, you're coming with us. Martinez, take Kovach and his crew to medical, then the SHU pending investigation. Everyone else clear this yard. Show's over. As guards began moving inmates back toward cell blocks, James stood his body aching from impacts he'd barely registered during the fight. Adrenaline was fading now, leaving behind the familiar post-combat shakes that 20 years of experience had taught him to hide. Hayes fell into step beside him as they walked toward the administration building. You look like hell, James. Feel worse, Colonel. I told you to stay out of trouble. Trouble found me. It always does with you. She paused. How's Sarah? Worried, scared, angry that I'm here. She should be. You saved a woman's life and got 18 months for it. The system failed you. The system did what it thought was right. The system was wrong, which is why I'm here to fix it. James stopped walking, turned to face her. What do you mean, fix it? Hayes smiled. You didn't think I'd let one of my best operators rot in prison without fighting back, did you? I've been working your case since the day you were sentenced. And after what happened today, I finally have the ammunition I need to get you out. I don't understand. You will. Just trust me, James. Like you trusted me in Kabul when everything went sideways. James remembered Kabul, remembered Hayes coordinating air support while James's team was pinned down, remembered her voice on the radio saying, I've got you, don't worry. She'd been right then. Maybe she was right now. They reached Morrison's office, and Hayes gestured for James to enter first. After you, Commander. Let's talk about getting you home. Inside Morrison's office, James sat in the chair across from her desk, while Hayes remained standing, her tablet in hand, fingers already swiping through files with the efficiency of someone who'd prepared for this moment. Warden, before we begin, I need you to understand that what I'm about to share contains classified elements of Commander Mitchell's service record. I've been authorized to disclose certain details given the circumstances, but this conversation cannot leave this room. Morrison leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. Colonel Hayes, with all due respect, I run this facility. I don't take orders from the Department of Defense. I'm not giving orders, ma'am. I'm asking for professional courtesy between two people who've dedicated their careers to public service. Fair enough. Talk. Hayes turned the tablet so both Morrison and James could see the screen. 3 months ago, I was contacted by Senator Patricia Chen from Virginia. She'd heard about Commander Mitchell's conviction and wanted to know if the military would support a clemency petition. I reviewed his case, his service record, and the circumstances of his arrest. James felt his stomach drop. "Colonel, I told you I didn't want special treatment." "You told me a lot of things, Commander. I ignored most of them." Hayes swiped to another screen. "The woman you saved in Denver is named Rebecca Santos, 28 years old, single mother of 2. The 3 men attacking her had prior convictions for assault, domestic violence, and sexual battery. One of them, Marcus Brennan, was out on parole for attempted rape." Morrison's eyes widened. "The prosecutor didn't mention that at trial. The prosecutor mentioned that all 3 men had criminal records but downplayed the severity. He focused the jury's attention on Commander Mitchell's training, argued that someone with his skills should have used less force, should have called police instead of intervening directly." "How long would police response have taken?" Morrison asked. 18 minutes from the time of Mitchell's 911 call to when officers arrived. By then, Rebecca Santos would have been dead or permanently brain damaged from the head trauma she was already sustaining. James closed his eyes, remembering Santos's screams, remembering the sound of her skull hitting concrete, remembering the choice between calling for help that wouldn't arrive in time and stopping the violence himself. "The jury convicted him anyway," Morrison said quietly. "The jury was scared of him. They heard Delta Force and highly trained killer and decided he was too dangerous to be free. They compromised with 18 months in minimum security, thinking they were being lenient." Hayes's voice hardened. "They sent a man to prison for saving a life." "So what's your plan, Colonel? You want me to recommend early release?" "I want more than that." Hayes swiped to a new document. "I want you to testify at a clemency hearing about what you witnessed today. I want you to explain how Commander Mitchell defended himself against 6 attackers without causing permanent injury. I want you to demonstrate to a federal judge that his military training makes him less dangerous, not more, because he has the discipline to use minimum necessary force." Morrison was quiet for a long moment. "That's a lot to ask." "I know. If I testify, I'm putting my professional credibility on the line. I'm telling a judge that military training is an asset, not a threat. Other wardens won't like that. Prosecutors won't like that. The guards union won't like that. I'm not asking you to lie, Warden. I'm asking you to tell the truth about what you saw." Morrison looked at James, studied his face like she was trying to read something written there. "Cole, why didn't you fight the conviction? Why didn't you appeal?" James thought about Sarah's voice on the phone, about Tyler asking if Grandpa was in trouble, about dragging his family through months of media attention and legal battles. Because fighting it meant making the woman I saved testify again, relive that night again. It meant my daughter dealing with reporters camped outside her house. It meant my grandson seeing his grandfather's face on the news, hearing people call him dangerous. I didn't want that for them. "So you just accepted 18 months away from your family?" "I accepted the consequences of my choices. That's what being a man means." Morrison's expression softened slightly. "You know what I see when I look at you, Cole. I see someone who spent his entire life protecting others at cost to himself. Military service, dangerous deployments, classified operations. Then you get home, and you're still protecting people, still putting yourself at risk for strangers. And the system punished you for it." "The system did what it thought was right." "The system was wrong." Morrison opened her desk drawer, pulled out a folder. "I've been running prisons for 30 years. I've seen thousands of violent offenders come through these gates. Men who hurt people for pleasure, for profit, for no reason at all. You're not one of them, Cole. You're someone who used violence as a last resort to save a life. There's a difference." Hayes leaned forward. "Will you testify?" Morrison was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Yes, I'll testify. But understand this, Colonel. My testimony won't guarantee anything. Clemency is rare. Judges don't like overturning jury verdicts." "I understand, but it's a start. What else do you need from me?" "Immediate protective custody for Commander Mitchell. His identity is compromised now, Every inmate in this facility will know who he is within hours. Some will want to test themselves against him, others will see him as a threat, and Kovacs's gang will want revenge. Morrison nodded. Already planned on it. Cole, you're moving to PC tonight. Separate cell individual yard time escort to meals and programs. James started to protest, but Hayes cut him off. Don't argue, Commander. This is non-negotiable. I don't need protection. You proved that today. But protective custody isn't about what you need. It's about preventing further incidents. If you stay in general population, you'll face constant challenges. Every wannabe tough guy in this place will want to prove himself against the Delta Force operator. Eventually, you'll have to hurt someone badly, and that will destroy any chance of clemency. Morrison added, She's right, Cole. What happened today was self-defense, clear and documented. But if you're involved in another fight next week, another one the week after, the pattern starts looking different. Judges see repeated violence and assume you're the problem. James felt trapped, boxed in by logic he couldn't refute. How long would protective custody last? Until your sentence ends or until clemency comes through, Morrison said. Could be 12 months, could be less if Colonel Hayes's plan works. And if it doesn't work, if clemency gets denied, Hayes met his eyes. Then you serve the rest of your time in protective custody, and we try again through different channels. But I'm not giving up on you, Commander. I didn't spend 5 years watching you save American lives just to let you rot in prison for doing the same thing on American soil. A knock on the door interrupted them. Officer Martinez entered, his expression grim. Warden medical team just finished with Kovacs and his crew. Derek Schmidt has a cracked rib. Connor Murphy's nose is broken. Wayne Jessup has a concussion. Billy Henderson has bruised ribs and a sprained wrist. Travis Meeks has a hyperextended elbow that'll need physical therapy. Kovacs has a broken nose and a strained shoulder. Any permanent damage? Morrison asked. No, ma'am. Doctor says they'll all recover fully within 6 to 8 weeks. Hayes turned to James. See surgical precision. You could have killed them, Commander. You chose not to. Martinez continued. But there's a problem, ma'am. While the medical team was treating Kovacs, he started making threats. Said this wasn't over, said Mitchell was a dead man, said he'd put a price on his head. James felt ice slide down his spine. Prison economics ran on violence and favors. If Kovacs put out a contract, someone would try to collect. Morrison's jaw clenched. What kind of price? $5,000 in commissary plus protection for whoever does it. That's enough money to tempt some of the desperates in general population. Kovacs doesn't have $5,000 in commissary. No, but his connections outside do. He made calls for medical, talked to people who can fund it. Hayes looked at Morrison. You need to isolate him immediately. Cut off his communications, shut down his ability to coordinate attacks. Already done. Kovacs is going to administrative segregation indefinitely. No phone privileges, no visitors except legal counsel, no contact with general population. Morrison paused. But the damage might already be done. If word's out about the contract, Cole's a walking target. James thought about 12 more months in protective custody, isolated and alone, separated from other inmates, cut off from any chance of normalcy. Then he thought about Tyler's face, about going home to his grandson, about Sarah's voice saying, "Please be safe." "I'll take protective custody," James said quietly. "Whatever keeps me alive long enough to get home." Morrison nodded. "Martinez, take Cole to PC housing now. Full escort, secure route, no contact with general population." "Yes, ma'am." As James stood to leave, Hayes touched his arm. "Commander, one more thing. Rebecca Santos wants to talk to you." James froze. "The woman from Denver?" "Yes. She's been trying to reach you for months. Wrote letters that got blocked by security protocols called the prison, but wasn't allowed to speak with you. She wants to testify at your clemency hearing." What could she possibly have to say that would help? Hayes smiled. "Why don't you ask her yourself? I have her on video call." She pulled out her tablet, tapped the screen, and suddenly, Rebecca Santos's face filled the display. James felt his breath catch. He'd seen her that night in Denver, seen her bleeding and terrified, seen her testify at his trial with tears streaming down her face. But this was different. This was her choosing to reach out, choosing to reconnect with the violence that had changed both their lives. "Mr. Mitchell." Rebecca's voice came through the tablet speaker, steady but emotional. "I've been trying to talk to you for so long." "Ms. Santos, you don't owe me anything. You testified at my trial. You told the truth. That's all I ever asked." "The truth." Her voice cracked slightly. "The truth is that I'm alive because of you. My daughters still have a mother because you stopped those men, and you went to prison for it." "I made a choice. I don't regret it." "But I regret it. I regret that my testimony wasn't enough, that the jury didn't listen, that you're in there while I'm out here living the life you saved." James didn't know what to say. He'd never expected gratitude, never wanted it. He'd done what any decent person should do. "Mr. Mitchell, I need you to know something. Those men weren't just drunk and stupid like Kovacs told you. They were hunting. Marcus Brennan, the one who pulled the knife, he had a pattern. 5 women in 2 years, all assaulted in similar ways, but he was careful enough never to leave evidence that stuck, until that night when you stopped him. You don't have to explain." "Yes, I do. Because the prosecutor made it sound like you overreacted to a bar fight. But it wasn't a bar fight, Mr. Mitchell. It was attempted murder. Brennan told me while he was kicking my ribs that he was going to kill me because I reminded him of his ex-wife. Said he was going to make sure I never reminded anyone of anything ever again." James felt his hands clench. He'd known the attack was serious, had seen the intent in Brennan's eyes, but hearing Rebecca confirm it brought everything back. "When you pulled him off me, when you hit him hard enough to break his jaw, you weren't using excessive force. You were using exactly the force necessary to stop someone who was actively trying to kill me. The prosecutor twisted it, made it sound like you lost control. But I was there, Mr. Mitchell. I saw your face. You were completely in control. Every move you made was deliberate, measured, precise." "Ms. Santos." "Rebecca, please." "Rebecca, this isn't your fault. The jury made their decision based on the evidence presented. You can't blame yourself. But I can testify again. I can tell a judge what really happened, what the prosecutor left out, what the jury didn't understand. Colonel Hayes says there's going to be a clemency hearing. I want to be there. I need to be there." Hayes spoke up. Rebecca's testimony could be the difference between approval and denial. A federal judge hearing directly from the person you saved, hearing her say that your response was appropriate and necessary, that carries significant weight. Morrison added, "Combined with my testimony about today's incident about your restraint, even when attacked by 6 men, it creates a clear pattern. You're not someone who uses excessive force. You're someone who uses the minimum force necessary to stop threats." James looked at Rebecca's face on the screen, saw the determination there, the need to make things right. "You have children to think about," James said. "Testifying means media attention reporters asking questions your face on the news. Are you ready for that?" "Mr. Mitchell, my daughters are 8 and 10 years old. Every night before bed, they pray for the man who saved their mommy. They don't know your name, don't know you're in prison, but they know someone helped when no one else would. If testifying means they get to meet you someday, tell you thank you in person, then yes, I'm ready for whatever comes." James felt his throat tighten. "Tell them they don't need to pray for me. Tell them to pray for all the people who need help and don't get it. I'll tell them that the man who saved me is exactly the kind of man worth praying for." The call ended, and James stood there feeling like the walls were closing in. Too many people fighting for him, too many people putting themselves at risk, too much attention when all he'd wanted was to serve his time quietly. "Colonel, I appreciate everything you're doing, but this is getting bigger than it needs to be." "It's exactly as big as it needs to be, Commander. Your case highlights systemic problems with how we treat veterans, how we criminalize protective action, how we punish people for doing the right thing. If we don't fight this publicly, nothing changes." Martinez cleared his throat. "Ma'am, we need to move Cole to protective custody before shift change. Too many inmates will be moving around during transition." Morrison nodded. "Go. Colonel Hayes, let's discuss the clemency timeline." James followed Martinez out of the office through corridors that suddenly felt more dangerous than they had this morning. Every inmate they passed stared, word already spreading about the fight, about who James really was, about the contract Kovacs had put out. "Is it true?" one inmate called out as they passed. "You really Delta Force?" James didn't respond, just kept walking. Another voice from a cell they passed. "Yo, Cole, heard you took down 6 of Kovacs's boys. That true?" Martinez spoke without breaking stride. "Everyone keep quiet, move along." But the voices continued following them down the corridor like echoes. 5,000 commissary for anyone who gets him. Kovacs is going to make sure you never leave this place. Dead man walking. Martinez's hand moved to his radio, ready to call for backup if the verbal threats turned physical. But they reached the protective custody wing without incident, and Martinez unlocked a cell at the end of the corridor. "This is you, Cole. Single occupancy individual yard time from 6 to 7 a.m. meals delivered to your cell. No contact with general population." James stepped inside, turned to face Martinez. "Officer, thank you for testifying about what you saw today." "Just did my job, Cole. But between you and me, I've been doing this 12 years, and I've never seen anyone handle themselves like you did. You could have killed those men. You chose not to. That takes more control than most people have." "It's just training." "No, it's character. Training teaches you how to hurt people. Character teaches you when not to." Martinez paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I hope Colonel Hayes gets you out of here. You don't belong in this place. I was convicted by a jury. I belong here as much as anyone." "You keep saying that, but it doesn't make it true." Martinez closed the cell door, locked it. "Get some rest, Cole. Tomorrow's going to be interesting when word spreads about who you really are." James sat on the narrow bunk, his body finally registering the pain from impacts he'd ignored during the fight. His ribs ached where Billy had tackled him, his jaw throbbed where Kovacs's first punch had landed, his knuckles were swollen from defensive strikes. But worse than the physical pain was the knowledge that everything had changed. 7 weeks of anonymity gone, 12 months of quiet time impossible now, his plan to serve his sentence and disappear shattered by 15 seconds of violence he'd tried to avoid. The cell phone Hayes had given him before she left buzzed with a text message. "Sarah. Dad, Colonel Hayes called me, said you were in a fight, but you're okay. Please tell me you're okay." James typed slowly, his swollen fingers making it difficult. "I'm fine, baby girl. No serious injuries, just some bruises." She said 6 men attacked you. 6 Dad. "It's handled now. I'm in protective custody. Safe. Safe in prison. Those 2 words shouldn't go together." James didn't have a response to that. Another text appeared. "Tyler wants to talk to you. Can I call?" James looked at the phone, thought about hearing his grandson's voice about explaining why Grandpa was in more trouble about lying again, that everything was fine. "Not tonight, Sarah. I'm too tired. Tomorrow, I promise." "Okay. I love you, Dad. Please stay safe." "I love you too. Tell Tyler I miss him." James set the phone down, lay back on the bunk, and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in general population, Kovacs was plotting revenge. Somewhere in Virginia, his daughter was worrying herself sick. Somewhere in the Department of Defense, Hayes was building a clemency case that might or might not succeed. And here in protective custody, James Mitchell was alone with his choices, his principles, and the question that had haunted him since Denver. Was doing the right thing worth this cost? Hours passed. Dinner arrived through a slot in the door, bland and cold. James ate mechanically, fueling his body because training said to, not because he had any appetite. Then the cell phone buzzed again. Unknown number. James hesitated, then answered. "Hello. Commander Mitchell." A man's voice familiar, but James couldn't place it. "Who is this?" "Master Sergeant David Torres. We served together in Helmand Province, 2011. You saved my life when our convoy got ambushed." James remembered. Torres had taken shrapnel to the leg, couldn't walk, and James had carried him 300 meters under fire to reach the extraction point. "Torres, how did you get this number?" "Colonel Hayes gave it to me. Said you might need to hear from someone who understands what you're going through." Torres paused. "I heard about Denver, about your conviction, and I heard about what happened today in the yard." "News travels fast." "Veteran community takes care of its own, sir. There are 40 of us in the D.C. area who served with you at various points. We're organizing putting together support for your clemency hearing, character witnesses' testimony about your service letters to the judge." James felt his chest tighten. "Torres, you don't need to do that." "Yes, we do. You carried me when I couldn't walk. A lot of guys here have similar stories." You pulled Martinez out of a burning vehicle in Fallujah. You covered Baker's position when he got pinned down in Syria. You went back for Williams when everyone else said he was already dead. I was doing my job. You were saving lives. Same thing you did in Denver. Same thing you did today when you held back against those gang members. You could have killed them, sir. Your training gave you a dozen ways to end that fight with fatal force. But you chose restraint. That's who you are. James didn't know what to say. He'd never thought about his actions in those terms, had never cataloged the moments when he'd chosen not to kill when killing would have been easier. Torres, I appreciate this, but I don't want you guys putting your lives on hold for me. Too late, sir. We're already committed. You taught us that brothers don't leave brothers behind. Well, you're behind bars that shouldn't exist, and we're coming to get you out. The line went quiet for a moment. Then Torres spoke again, his voice softer. How are you really doing, Commander? James thought about lying, about maintaining the strong facade, about protecting his men from worry, even though he wasn't their commander anymore. But Torres had bled beside him, had trusted James with his life, had earned honesty. I'm tired, Torres. I'm tired of fighting, tired of defending choices I'd make, again tired of being away from my family, but I'm hanging in there. That's all you can do, sir. Hang in there until we get you home. After Torres hung up, James lay back down and tried to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. His mind kept replaying the fight, analyzing each decision, questioning whether he could have handled it differently. If he'd paid Kovach's tribute, he'd still be anonymous, still be safe, still have 12 quiet months ahead of him. But he'd also be someone who submitted to bullies who paid protection money to racists who compromised his principles for convenience. And James had learned long ago that you couldn't compromise on principles without losing pieces of yourself that never grew back. Sometime after midnight, voices echoed down the corridor. Inmates and general population calling out to him. Hey, Delta Force, you awake? James didn't respond. Kovach says you're dead, says someone's going to collect that bounty. Still no response. You think you're safe and PC guards can't watch you every second. Someone's going to get you. Martinez's voice cut through the threats. Everyone shut up and get to sleep, or you're all spending tomorrow in solitary. The voices quieted, but James knew they were right. Protective custody, reduced risk didn't eliminate it. Someone motivated enough, desperate enough for 5,000 in commissary would find a way. The question was whether James could survive 12 more months in this environment, or whether Hayes's clemency petition would succeed before Kovach's contract did. James closed his eyes and tried to find the calm center that had sustained him through 2 decades of combat. Tried to remember Angela's face, Tyler's laugh, Sarah's voice saying she loved him. Tried to believe that doing the right thing would eventually lead to the right outcome, even though experience had taught him that justice and outcomes didn't always align. Somewhere in the building, Kovach was plotting. Somewhere in Virginia, Sarah was worrying. Somewhere in Washington, Hayes was fighting. And here in protective custody, cell number 17, James Mitchell was simply trying to survive one more day of the consequences that came from being the kind of man who couldn't walk past someone in need. He'd save Rebecca Santos again if given the choice. He'd defend himself against Kovach again if necessary. He'd keep fighting for what was right, even if it cost him everything. Because that's what principles meant. That's what Angela had loved about him. That's what he wanted Tyler to remember. Not that Grandpa went to prison, but that Grandpa stood up when standing up mattered. Even if it cost him 12 months of freedom, even if it cost him everything. James woke to the sound of his cell door opening and his body reacted before his mind caught up. Rolling off the bunk landing in a defensive crouch, hands ready, heart rate spiking from 60 to 90 in half a second. Officer Martinez stood in the doorway, hands raised, expression apologetic. Easy, Cole. Just me. Breakfast delivery. James forced himself to breathe, to stand down, to remember where he was. Not a fob under attack. Not an ambush in hostile territory. Just protective custody in a Colorado prison, and guards still had keys. Sorry, sir. Reflex. Martinez set the tray on the small desk, his eyes scanning James's posture with professional assessment. How'd you sleep? Didn't. Yeah, I figured. First night in PC is always rough, and you had those idiots yelling threats half the night. Martinez paused. There's something you should know. After my shift ended, I went through security footage from the yard. Wanted to document everything that happened for my report. And I found something interesting. About 15 minutes before Kovac approached you, Connor Murphy was talking to someone who shouldn't have been in that section of the yard. James felt his tactical awareness activate. Who? Officer Dennis Walsh, 12-year veteran, works cell block C where Kovac's crew is housed. Martinez's voice dropped. Walsh has been under investigation for 3 months. Internal affairs suspects he's running contraband, maybe coordinating gang activities. You think Walsh told Kovac when to make his move? I think Walsh made sure guards were positioned wrong when it happened. I was in the tower alone. Backup was on the far side of the facility. Response time got delayed by 4 minutes because Walsh radioed false information about a fight in the cafeteria that pulled resources away from the yard. James processed this. Guards working for inmates wasn't unusual, but coordination, this precise, suggested something bigger. Does Warden Morrison know? I'm briefing her in 20 minutes. But Cole, this means the contract on your life isn't just inmate gossip. It's got infrastructure behind it. Walsh can coordinate timing, create gaps in security, make sure someone gets access to you when you're vulnerable. Like during transport to medical or legal meetings. Exactly. Martinez moved closer, lowered his voice. Until Walsh is removed, you're not safe anywhere in this facility. Even protective custody. The cell phone buzzed. Sarah calling at 6:15 in the morning Colorado time, which meant 7:15 Virginia time. She should be getting Tyler ready for school, not calling her incarcerated father. I need to take this, James said. Martinez nodded, stepped out, locked the door. James answered. Sarah, what's wrong? Everything's wrong, Dad. Everything. Her voice was breaking tears, evident even through the phone connection. Colonel Hayes called me last night, told me about the fight, about the contract, about protective custody. She tried to make it sound safe, but I'm not stupid. You're a target now. Baby girl, I'm fine. They've got me separated from general population. For how long? 12 more months. You think you can survive 12 months with gangs trying to kill you? James wanted to lie to promise her everything would be okay, but Sarah deserved honesty. I don't know. That's not good enough, Dad. That's not good enough for me, and it's definitely not good enough for Tyler. He asked me last night why Grandpa can't come home. He's 6 years old, and he's asking me why the good guys keep the bad guys locked up, but they locked up Grandpa who saved that lady. James felt his chest constrict. What did you tell him? I told him the truth. That sometimes the world doesn't make sense, that sometimes good people get punished for doing good things, and that Grandpa is the bravest man I've ever known. Sarah's voice cracked completely. And then I went into the bathroom and cried for an hour because my son shouldn't have to learn those lessons at 6 years old. Sarah. No, Dad, let me finish. I've supported you through everything. Through Mom's death, through the arrest, through the trial, through 7 weeks of this nightmare. But I can't keep pretending I'm strong enough for this. I'm not. I'm breaking, Dad. I'm breaking and I don't know how to stop. James closed his eyes, feeling the weight of every choice he'd made, every consequence radiating outward to hurt the people he loved most. What do you need from me, baby girl? I need you to fight this. I need you to let Colonel Hayes do whatever she's planning. I need you to stop being so damn noble about accepting consequences and start fighting like your life depends on it, because it does. Because my life depends on it. Because Tyler's life depends on having his grandfather alive and free. The clemency hearing isn't enough. Hayes says clemency petitions get denied 80% of the time. Those aren't odds I can live with. Sarah took a shuddering breath. Dad, I'm begging you. Whatever it takes, whatever you have to do, fight this. Fight like you fought in Iraq, like you fought yesterday in that yard. Fight like you're fighting for us, because you are. James felt something shift inside him, the careful control he'd maintained since the conviction starting to crack. Okay. Okay, what? Okay, I'll fight. I'll do whatever Colonel Hayes says, whatever the lawyers recommend, whatever it takes. James paused. But Sarah, you need to promise me something. What? You need to take care of yourself. You need to see someone talk to someone because this weight is too heavy for you to carry alone. I can handle it. That's what I said about Denver, and look where it got me. James softened his voice. Please, baby girl, for me, talk to someone. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Okay, I'll call the Veterans Family Support Line. They have counselors who understand this stuff. Thank you. Dad, I love you, and I'm sorry I broke down like that. You're the one in danger, and here I am falling apart. You're allowed to fall apart. You're human, and I love you too, more than you'll ever know. After the call ended, James sat on his bunk and let himself feel the full weight of what Sarah had said. His daughter was breaking. His grandson was confused and scared. His choices, however principled, were causing pain to the people who mattered most. The cell door opened again. Martinez, his face grim. Morrison wants to see you, now. They walked through empty corridors, Martinez's hand never far from his radio, his eyes constantly scanning for threats. When they reached Morrison's office, Colonel Hayes was already there, along with a man James didn't recognize. Suit-expensive lawyer written all over him. "Cole, sit," Morrison said. "This is Daniel Richardson, attorney specializing in wrongful convictions and clemency cases. Colonel Hayes brought him in to handle your petition." Richardson extended his hand. James shook it, noting the firm grip, the direct eye contact. "Commander Mitchell, I've reviewed your case extensively. What happened to you is a miscarriage of justice, and I'm going to fix it." That's confident. "I'm expensive because I deliver results. 73 clemency cases in 15 years, 49 successful. Your case is stronger than most." Richardson pulled out files, spread them across Morrison's desk. "But we have problems." "What kind of problems?" "The prosecutor who convicted you, Assistant District Attorney Michael Brennan, is Marcus Brennan's brother." The room went silent. James felt ice flood his veins. "The man I fought in Denver, one of the men attacking Rebecca Santos, his brother, was the prosecutor. Yes, and Michael Brennan never disclosed this relationship, never recused himself, never admitted that his brother was one of the defendants in the assault case." Richardson's voice hardened. "That's prosecutorial misconduct, conflict of interest, and grounds for immediate appeal." Hayes leaned forward. "How did we not know this before?" "Because Michael Brennan uses his middle name professionally, goes by Michael J. Harrison in court. Marcus Brennan is his half-brother, different last names, and the connection wasn't obvious until I started digging into family records." Morrison looked stunned. "You're telling me this prosecutor had a personal vendetta against Cole and used his position to get a conviction? I'm telling you that Michael Brennan's brother got hospitalized after attacking a woman, and Michael used his position as prosecutor to make sure the man who stopped him paid for it. That's not justice, that's revenge." James thought about the trial, about the prosecutor's aggressive questioning, about the way he'd painted James as a dangerous veteran who couldn't control himself. It hadn't been about the evidence, it had been personal. "Can we prove this?" James asked. "Already did. I've got birth certificates, family trees, employment records. The connection is clear. Problem is, proving misconduct doesn't automatically overturn your conviction. We still need the clemency hearing, but this gives us ammunition." Hayes pulled out her tablet. "There's more. I've been investigating the jury selection. Turns out 3 jury members had family members in law enforcement who'd worked with Michael Brennan. The defense attorney should have caught this during voir dire, but he didn't." "My lawyer was court-appointed," James said. "Fresh out of law school, overwhelmed." "He was also compromised," Richardson said. "I found communications between him and Brennan suggesting cooperation. Your own lawyer was working against you." James felt rage building, carefully controlled, but definitely present. "So I never had a chance." "No, you didn't. They railroaded you, Commander, and we're going to prove it." Richardson checked his watch. "The clemency hearing is scheduled for next week. Federal Judge Patricia Morrison, no relation to Warden Morrison, will hear testimony. We'll present the prosecutorial misconduct, the jury tampering the conflict of interest. Combined with the warden's testimony about yesterday's incident and Rebecca Santos's testimony about the original assault, we should have enough for immediate release." "Should have enough" isn't the same as will have enough. "No, it's not. Which is why we need one more thing." Richardson looked at Hayes. Colonel, tell him. Hayes took a breath. Commander, I need you to authorize the declassification of certain portions of your service record, specific operations where you used controlled force in combat situations similar to Denver. It'll demonstrate a pattern of restraint of choosing minimum necessary force, even under extreme stress. James shook his head. Those operations are classified for national security reasons. People's lives depend on that information staying sealed. I'm not asking for full disclosure, just redacted summaries enough to show the pattern without compromising sources or methods. It's still a risk. It's a risk I'm willing to take to get you home to your family, Hayes said firmly. Commander, you spent 20 years protecting this country's secrets. Let me protect you for once. James thought about Sarah's voice on the phone about Tyler asking why Grandpa couldn't come home about 12 more months in protective custody with guards who might be compromised and gangs who wanted him dead. Okay, declassify what you need to. Morrison spoke up. There's one more complication. The media got hold of yesterday's incident. By tomorrow morning, every news outlet in the country is going to be running stories about the Delta Force operator in prison who took down 6 gang members. That's not a complication, Richardson said. That's leverage, public pressure, media attention, viral social media support. All of that helps. It also paints a bigger target on Cole's back, Morrison countered. Every inmate in this facility will know exactly who he is. Some will want to prove themselves, others will want that bounty, and the media circus will make it impossible to keep him safe. James felt the walls closing in. So what do we do? Martinez's radio crackled. Code red, officer down in cell block C. All available personnel respond. Martinez was out the door before anyone could speak, and Hayes was right behind him. James stood to follow, but Morrison grabbed his arm. You stay here. That's your cell block. Could be a distraction to get you moving through the facility. Through the office window, James could see guards running, could hear alarms blaring, could feel the familiar adrenaline spike that came from knowing something bad was happening and being unable to help. 5 minutes passed. 10. Morrison's phone rang. What? Her face went pale. When? How? She listened, then looked at James. Officer Walsh is dead. Someone stabbed him 17 times in the shower area. James felt his stomach drop. Kovacs. We don't know yet, but Cole Walsh was the guard we suspected of working with Kovacs, and now he's dead, which means either Kovacs is cleaning up witnesses or someone else is making moves we don't understand. Hayes returned her expression grim. It was Kovacs. Inmates saw him coming out of the shower area covered in blood. He's not even trying to hide it. Guards have him in restraints. He's laughing, saying Walsh deserved it for being a snitch. Walsh wasn't a snitch, Martinez said, following Hayes back into the office. He was Kovacs' inside man. Why would Kovacs kill him? Richardson stood. Because Walsh knew too much. About the contract, about the coordination, about whatever Kovacs is planning. Dead men can't testify. James processed this, his tactical mind running scenarios. Kovacs knows about the clemency hearing. He knows if I get out, if this goes public, investigations start. Walsh could have been questioned, could have given up information about gang operations. Kovacs is protecting himself by committing murder in front of witnesses. Morrison looked skeptical. That's life in prison, no parole. Why would he take that risk? Because he was already facing life, James said quietly. His original sentence was 15 years. Add the assault on me, add conspiracy charges, add the contract killing bounty. He was already looking at decades more. Killing Walsh doesn't change his math, but it does eliminate a witness. Hayes's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, and her face went white. We have a bigger problem. Rebecca Santos was attacked an hour ago outside her home in Denver. 2 men, she fought them off with pepper spray, but they left a message. What message? Stop helping the Delta Force killer, or next time we finish what Marcus Brennan started. James felt rage flood through him, hot and immediate. They went after Rebecca. Brennan has friends, Commander, and apparently they don't want her testifying at your hearing. Richardson was already on his phone. I'm calling the Denver PD requesting protective custody for Santos. This is witness intimidation federal offense. Morrison stood. This is escalating faster than we can control. Cole, you need to stay in your cell until the hearing. No transport, no movement, no exposure. I can't hide while people who are trying to help me get threatened. You don't have a choice. You're the target they're using to get to everyone else. Best thing you can do is stay out of sight, stay alive, and let us handle the threats. James wanted to argue, wanted to do something, wanted to protect Rebecca and his family and everyone else being pulled into this nightmare. But Morrison was right. Moving meant exposure. Exposure meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant giving Kovacs's people opportunities. Fine, I'll stay put. Hayes touched his arm. Commander, we're going to win this. The prosecutor's misconduct, the jury tampering, the witness intimidation. It's all evidence that your conviction was corrupt from the beginning. Unless the judge decides that corrupt or not a jury verdict stands unless overturned through proper appeals, not clemency. That's why we have Richardson. He knows how to navigate these waters. The lawyer nodded. Trust me, Commander. I've seen worse cases than yours result in immediate release. We just need to survive the next week without anyone else getting hurt. Martinez's radio crackled again. All clear in cell block C. Kovacs secured in administrative segregation. Medical examiner en route for Walsh's body. Morrison looked at James. Martinez, take Cole back to protective custody. Double lock, no visitors without my personal authorization guard posted outside his cell 24/7. So, as James walked back through the corridors past the crime scene where Walsh had died, past the inmates staring through their cell bars, he thought about the cost of doing the right thing. Rebecca Santos attacked in her own home. Walsh murdered because he knew too much. Sarah breaking under the weight of worry. Tyler learning lessons no 6-year-old should learn. And James trapped in a system that punished him for saving a life. Back in his cell, James sat on the bunk and called Sarah. Dad, I thought you weren't allowed calls during the day. Special circumstances. I need to tell you something and you need to stay calm. What happened? Rebecca Santos was attacked this morning. She's okay, fought them off, but it was a message meant to scare her away from testifying. Sarah's breath caught. Are we safe? Is Tyler safe? Hayes is arranging protection for you both. But Sarah, I need you to listen carefully. For the next week until the hearing, you stay with friends, you vary your routine, you trust no one you don't know personally. Dad, you're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. The people who attacked Rebecca want to stop the clemency hearing, which means they might target anyone connected to it. Why? Why do they care so much about keeping you in prison? James thought about Marcus Brennan's brother, about Kovacs's need for revenge, about systems that protected the guilty and punished the innocent. Because if I get out, if this case gets overturned, it exposes corruption. It shows that prosecutors can manipulate trials, that juries can be compromised, that the system failed. And people who benefit from that system don't want it exposed. So you're saying the people who should be protecting us are the ones we need to be protected from? Some of them, yeah. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. I'm taking Tyler to Mom's sister in North Carolina. We'll stay there until after the hearing. Aunt Jennifer has a farm middle of nowhere, no one knows about it. That's smart. Do it today. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Dad, are you going to be okay? James looked at the locked cell door, thought about Kovacs in administrative segregation, plotting revenge, thought about corrupted guards and witness intimidation and the week ahead. I'm going to fight baby girl, like you asked me to, whatever it takes. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. After the call, James lay back and tried to find calm. But calm was impossible when the world outside his cell was collapsing, when people he cared about were in danger, when the clemency hearing felt less like hope and more like a target. The cell phone buzzed. Unknown number. This is Mitchell. Commander, this is Marcus Williams, from General Population. James sat up. Marcus, how did you get this number? Doesn't matter. What matters is I got information you need. I'm listening. Kovacs killed Walsh because Walsh was going to testify against him. Internal Affairs offered Walsh a deal-reduced sentence in exchange for information about gang operations. Walsh was going to take, it was going to expose everything. Kovacs found out, killed him before he could talk. How do you know this? Because Walsh told me 2 days ago. Asked if I wanted in on the deal, said Internal Affairs was building a case against everyone dirty in this facility. Guards, inmates, everyone. Marcus paused. I said no, I'm not a snitch. But I'm also not stupid enough to think Kovacs won't kill anyone who knows what Walsh knew. Which includes you. Which includes me. So I'm calling to offer you something, Commander. Information in exchange for protection. James felt his tactical mind engage. What kind of information? Everything. Who's on Kovacs' payroll? Which guards are dirty? How the contraband system works? Where the money flows? I've been here 6 years. I've seen everything. And I'm willing to testify about all of it if it helps get you out and keeps me alive. Why would you do that? Marcus's voice softened. Because you're a good man, Commander. I've seen a lot of bad men in here, a lot of people who deserve their sentences. You're not one of them. You got railroaded, and it ain't right. And maybe if I help fix what happened to you, maybe that balances out some of the bad I've done. James thought about Marcus's advice from the first weeks about warning him that Kovacs was coming about genuine concern from someone who had no obligation to care. I'll talk to Colonel Hayes, see if she can arrange protection for you. Thank you, Commander. And hey, for what it's worth, that thing you did in the yard yesterday, taking down 6 men without killing any of them. That was the most controlled violence I've ever seen. You're not what that prosecutor said you were. You're exactly what every soldier should be. The call ended, and James immediately dialed Hayes. Colonel, I just got a call from Marcus Williams. He's got information about Kovacs' operations, willing to testify, but he needs protection. Can we trust him? My gut says yes. He's scared he's smart, and he understands that Kovacs is cleaning house. I'll talk to Morrison. See if we can move Williams to protective custody with you. Safety in numbers. And if he's willing to testify, his information could strengthen the case against Kovacs. There's something else. Williams said Walsh was cooperating with Internal Affairs before Kovacs killed him. That means there's an ongoing investigation into corruption in this facility. Which means whatever Kovacs is planning, he's desperate. Desperate men make mistakes, Commander. We just need to stay alive long enough for him to make one we can use. Hours crawled by. Dinner arrived through the slot, cold and tasteless. James ate anyway, maintaining discipline, fueling his body for whatever came next. His phone buzzed. Richardson. Commander, I've got news. One of the jury members from your trial reached out to me. Says she wants to testify at the clemency hearing. Which one? Juror number 7, Patricia Chen, says she had doubts during deliberation but felt pressured by the foreman to vote guilty. Jury deliberations are confidential. Not when there's evidence of misconduct. Chen says the foreman, a retired police officer, told the jury that military veterans with PTSD were dangerous and couldn't be trusted. Said his own son came back from Iraq violent and unstable. Chen feels guilty that she let that bias influence her vote. James remembered the foreman, remembered the man's hard eyes during trial, remembered thinking he looked like someone who'd already made up his mind. What does this mean for the hearing? It means we can demonstrate jury bias, argue that the verdict was tainted by prejudice against veterans. Combined with the prosecutor's conflict of interest, it's a strong case for overturning your conviction entirely, not just granting clemency. Richardson, I need you to be honest with me. What are the real odds here? The lawyer was quiet for a moment. 70-30 in your favor, maybe 75-25. The evidence of corruption is strong. The witness intimidation is clear, and public opinion is turning in your direction. But federal judges are conservative about overturning jury verdicts. It could go either way. So I could walk out next week or serve another 12 months. Or the judge could order a new trial, which means starting over, which means months more of this while we prepare. James felt exhaustion settle into his bones. Whatever happens, I appreciate what you're doing. Don't thank me yet, Commander. Thank me when you're home with your grandson. That night, James didn't sleep. He lay in the dark cell listening to sounds from general population voices echoing through concrete and steel, wondering which ones belonged to men who wanted him dead. At 3 a.m., footsteps approached his cell. James was on his feet, immediately ready for anything. The guard outside his door spoke. "Cole, you've got a visitor. Middle of the night, emergency authorization from the warden." "Who?" "Says her name is Rebecca Santos." James felt his heart rate spike. "Let her in." The door opened, and Rebecca Santos stepped into his cell, flanked by 2 guards. She looked tired, scared, but determined. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm sorry for the hour, but I needed to see you." "Rebecca, you shouldn't be here. It's not safe." "Nowhere safe right now. Not for you, not for me, not for anyone trying to help you." She sat on the single chair, and the guard stepped outside, but left the door open. "Those men who attacked me this morning, they said things. Things about you, about the trial, about what really happened that night in Denver." "What did they say?" Rebecca's hands shook slightly. "They said Marcus Brennan's brother is the prosecutor who convicted you. They said the whole trial was rigged, that you never had a chance. And they said if I testify at your hearing, they'll make sure I end up like you did, beaten and bloody in an alley." "Then don't testify. It's not worth your life." "That's the thing, Mr. Mitchell. It is worth my life because you already saved it once. I'm alive because you didn't walk past that alley. My daughters have a mother because you chose to help when no one else would. How can I walk past you now when you need help?" James felt his throat tighten. "Rebecca, I appreciate that, but I can't ask you to risk yourself." "You're not asking. I'm choosing, just like you chose to help me." She leaned forward. "Colonel Hayes told me about your daughter, about your grandson." "Tyler Wright, 6 years old." "Yes. My youngest is 7, and every time I look at her, I think about how close she came to growing up without a mother. How close I came to missing her first day of school, her first lost tooth, every moment that matters." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "Your grandson deserves those moments with you, and I'm going to make sure he gets them, even if it means facing down the people who want to keep you here. You're a brave woman, Rebecca Santos." "No, Mr. Mitchell, you're brave. I'm just trying to do the right thing, same as you." After she left, James sat in the dark and thought about choices, about consequences, about the ripple effects of one decision in a Denver alley that had changed so many lives. He'd saved Rebecca. Rebecca was fighting to save him. And somewhere in the middle of it all, justice was trying to find its way through a system designed to obscure it. The phone buzzed. Hayes. "Commander, the hearing is set for 3 days from now. Tuesday morning, 9 a.m., Federal Courthouse in Denver. You'll be transported under heavy security. Richardson will present the evidence. Rebecca will testify. Morrison will testify. I'll testify. We'll make the strongest case possible." And then Judge Morrison decides whether you've suffered enough for doing the right thing, or whether the system that failed you gets to keep failing you for another year. Colonel, whatever happens, thank you. Save your thanks, Commander. We haven't won yet. 3 days, 72 hours between now and freedom or continued imprisonment. Between going home to Tyler or serving another year in protective custody while threats multiplied and danger grew. James closed his eyes and tried to find the calm center that had sustained him through 2 decades of combat, through Angela's death, through the trial and conviction, and 7 weeks of prison. Tried to believe that doing the right thing would eventually lead to the right outcome. Tried to have faith that justice, however delayed, would eventually arrive. But faith was hard when the evidence suggested that justice was just another word for luck, and luck had never been James Mitchell's strong suit. Tuesday morning arrived like a verdict before the trial, inevitable and terrifying. James woke at 4 a.m. to guards opening his cell, their faces tense, hands resting on weapons they hoped they wouldn't need. Time to move Cole. Transport's waiting. The journey from Ridgemont to the federal courthouse in Denver took 3 hours under normal circumstances. Today, with security protocols and threat assessments, they'd budgeted 5. James wore civilian clothes for the first time in 7 weeks, and the fabric felt foreign against his skin, like wearing someone else's life. Martinez drove the lead vehicle, 2 more transport vans following, all with tinted windows and armed guards. James sat in the middle van, wrists cuffed to a chain around his waist, ankles shackled. Not because they thought he'd run, but because regulations demanded it. "You ready for this, Cole?" Martinez asked from the driver's seat. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Richardson's good. Best clemency lawyer in the state. If anyone can get you out, it's him." James watched Colorado landscape pass through the window, mountains in the distant sky impossibly blue. Angela had loved Colorado. Mornings had talked about retiring here someday, buying a cabin in the mountains where they could watch their grandchildren grow up surrounded by nature instead of military bases. She never got that chance. James wondered if he would. His phone buzzed. Sarah texting from North Carolina, where she and Tyler had been staying with her aunt. "Dad, we're watching the news. They're covering your hearing. Tyler wants to know if you're coming home today." James typed slowly with cuffed hands. "Tell him Grandpa's trying his hardest." That's not good enough for a 6-year-old. He needs certainty. Then lie to him, baby girl. Tell him whatever he needs to hear to feel safe. "I've been lying to him for 7 weeks. I'm tired of lying." James didn't respond. What could he say? That he was tired of everything, that the fight had worn him down to nothing, that he wasn't sure he had enough left to survive disappointment. If the judge ruled against him, Martinez's radio crackled. "Lead vehicle, this is tail vehicle. We've got a black SUV following us 2 cars back. Been there since we left Ridgemont." Martinez tensed. "Can you see plates? Negative, tinted windows, no front plate." James's training kicked in automatically. "How long have they been following? 15 minutes, maybe 20? That's too long to be coincidence. They're tracking our route." Martinez grabbed his radio. "All units, possible tail vehicle, black SUV. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Cole's security is priority 1. The convoy accelerated, taking an unexpected exit off the highway. The SUV followed. Then another SUV appeared ahead of them, blocking the exit ramp. "We've got a problem," Martinez said, his hand moving to his sidearm. James felt his heart rate spike, but kept his voice calm. "How many vehicles?" 3 now, 1 behind, 1 ahead, 1 coming up on the right. "They're boxing us in. Classic ambush formation." Martinez floored the accelerator, smashing through the blockade with the front bumper. Metal screamed, glass shattered, but the transport van pushed through. Behind them, the other 2 prison vehicles followed, and the SUVs gave chase. "All units, we are under active pursuit. Requesting local police backup coordinates, transmitting now." Gunfire erupted from the lead SUV, bullets sparking off the transport van's reinforced body. James threw himself to the floor, chains rattling, while Martinez swerved hard left to avoid incoming fire. "Cole, stay down. Who the hell is shooting at a prison transport?" "Kovach's people, probably. He's got connections outside money to hire professionals." More gunfire. The rear window exploded, safety glass showering James's back. He could hear sirens now, police responding, but they were still minutes away, and the SUVs weren't giving up. Martinez's radio: "Tail vehicle taking heavy fire, multiple casualties, we're going down." James's military instincts screamed at him to act, to fight, to do something other than lie helpless on the floor while people died protecting him. But the chains held him immobile, useless, trapped. The lead SUV pulled alongside, and James saw the passenger window roll down, saw the barrel of an assault rifle, saw Martinez's eyes widen as he realized what was coming. James launched himself forward, despite the chains tackling Martinez sideways, just as bullets tore through the driver's side door. The van swerved wildly, clipped a guardrail, spun completely around before Martinez regained control with James half on top of him. "Jesus Christ, Cole." "You're welcome. Now drive before they reload." Police cruisers appeared ahead, forming a protective barrier, and the SUVs peeled off in different directions. The immediate threat passed, but James could see smoke rising from the tail vehicle, could see guards stumbling out, holding wounded colleagues. "How bad?" James asked. Martinez was on his radio getting damage reports. 2 guards down, non-fatal. 1 civilian vehicle hit by stray fire, unknown casualties. He looked at James. "You just saved my life." Seemed like the thing to do. "Those chains should have made it impossible for you to move that fast." Training teaches you to work around limitations. 30 minutes later, surrounded by police escort and emergency vehicles, they pulled into the federal courthouse parking garage. News crews were everywhere, cameras recording reporters shouting questions that guards ignored. Richardson met them at the secure entrance, his expression grim. "Commander, are you hurt?" "I'm fine." "What about the civilians?" "Minor injuries they'll recover, but this changes things. Someone tried to kill you before you could testify. That's evidence of conspiracy witness intimidation on a level we've never seen." Richardson's eyes gleamed. "And it's going to destroy whatever credibility the prosecution has left." Inside the courthouse, James was led to a holding cell where they removed his chains. His wrists were raw, bleeding slightly from where he'd fought against the metal to tackle Martinez. A medic cleaned and bandaged them while Richardson briefed him on the hearing. Judge Patricia Morrison, 20 years on federal bench, former military attorney, reputation for fairness. She's reviewed all our evidence, including the attack this morning. Same last name as the warden. Pure coincidence, but it's a good sign that she has military background. She'll understand combat training better than most judges. Hayes appeared in the doorway, her face pale. "Commander, we have a problem. Michael Brennan is here." James felt ice flood his chest. "The prosecutor, why?" "He's claiming he has new evidence that needs to be presented. Says it's relevant to your mental state to whether you're a danger to society." "What kind of evidence?" "He won't say until he's in front of the judge. But Commander, he looks scared. Really scared. Like a man who knows his career is about to implode." Richardson stood. "Let him present whatever he wants. We've got him dead to rights on prosecutorial misconduct. Anything he says now is desperation." They walked to the courtroom together, James flanked by guards, still wearing civilian clothes that felt wrong, still processing the ambush attempt, still trying to find calm before the storm. The courtroom was packed. Rebecca Santos sat in the front row, her daughters beside her, all three wearing their best clothes. Warden Morrison sat 2 rows back, Officer Martinez next to her with fresh bandages on his arm. Master Sergeant Torres and 40 other veterans in dress uniform filled the left side silent and solid. Sarah sat in the very front, Tyler on her lap, both of them staring at James with eyes that held too much hope and too much fear. James wanted to go to them to hold his grandson to tell Sarah everything would be okay. But guards directed him to the defendant's table, and all he could do was mouth, "I love you," across the distance. Judge Patricia Morrison entered, and everyone stood. She was 60, gray hair, sharp eyes, presence that commanded immediate respect. "Be seated. We're here for clemency petition number 2024 CV 8847, James Mitchell versus United States of America. I've reviewed the materials submitted by both parties, and I have questions." She looked directly at James. "Commander Mitchell, stand please." James stood, his heart hammering. "Commander, you served 20 years in Delta Force. You conducted classified operations in 7 countries. You earned medals you're not authorized to display. And then you came home and put 3 men in the hospital for attacking a woman. Help me understand how someone with your training and discipline ended up here." James thought about all the prepared statements Richardson had coached him on, all the legal language designed to sound contrite without admitting excessive force. He threw it all away. "Your Honor, I saw a woman being beaten to death in an alley while other people walked past. I called 911, but response time was 18 minutes, and she didn't have 18 minutes. I tried to talk the attackers down, but they had a knife and escalated. So I stopped them using the minimum force I believed necessary to save her life. I'd make the same choice again." Judge Morrison's expression didn't change. "The jury found you used excessive force." "The jury was biased against veterans, Your Honor. The foreman told them military training made me dangerous, and the prosecutor who convinced them had a personal vendetta because one of the attackers was his brother." Michael Brennan shot to his feet. "Objection. That's a lie." Judge Morrison's eyes shifted to him. "Mr. Brennan, you're not part of these proceedings. Sit down or I'll have you removed." "Your Honor, I have evidence that Commander Mitchell is mentally unstable, that he represents an ongoing threat." "I said sit down." The judge's voice could have frozen nitrogen. Bailiff, if Mr. Brennan speaks again without permission, remove him from my courtroom." Brennan sat, but his hands were shaking, his face pale. Richardson stood. "Your Honor, if I may address Mr. Brennan's presence. Michael Brennan prosecuted Commander Mitchell's case despite having a direct conflict of interest. Marcus Brennan, one of the men who attacked Rebecca Santos, is his half-brother. He never disclosed this relationship, never recused himself, and used his position to exact revenge for his brother's hospitalization." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Morrison slammed her gavel. "Order, Mr. Richardson, these are serious allegations. Can you prove them?" "Yes, Your Honor. Birth certificates, family trees, employment records, all filed with the court this morning. The relationship is undeniable." Judge Morrison turned to Brennan, her expression thunderous. "Mr. Brennan, is this true?" Brennan stood slowly. "Your Honor, my relationship to Marcus Brennan is irrelevant. The evidence against Mitchell was solid. The jury verdict was sound. Your relationship to a victim in a case you prosecuted is the definition of relevant. You should have recused yourself immediately." Judge Morrison looked at her clerk. "Note for the record that I'm referring this matter to the State Bar for disciplinary proceedings." Brennan's face went white. "Your Honor, you can't." "I can, and I am. Bailiff, escort Mr. Brennan from the courtroom. He's no longer welcome in these proceedings." As Brennan was led away, he locked eyes with James, and the hatred there was pure and venomous. "This isn't over, Mitchell. Even if you get out today, I'll make sure you regret ever touching my brother." "That sounds like a threat," Judge Morrison said coldly. "Bailiff, detain Mr. Brennan for questioning. Add witness intimidation to the bar complaint." The courtroom descended into chaos. Guards surrounded Brennan, who was shouting about conspiracies and cover-ups. Sarah was crying, clutching Tyler, who looked confused and scared. Rebecca Santos was on her feet, looking vindicated and terrified simultaneously. Judge Morrison slammed her gavel repeatedly until silence returned. "This hearing will proceed. Mr. Richardson, call your first witness." The defense calls Rebecca Santos. Rebecca walked to the witness stand, was sworn in, sat with her hands folded and her voice shaking slightly. "Ms. Santos, tell the court what happened on the night of March 15th, 2023. Rebecca took a breath. "I was leaving a bar where I'd met friends for dinner. 3 men followed me into the alley behind the building. They grabbed me, pushed me down, started kicking me. One of them, Marcus Brennan, told me he was going to kill me because I reminded him of his ex-wife. What did you do?" I screamed for help. I tried to fight back, but there were 3 of them. They were drunk and violent, and I thought I was going to die. Her voice broke. Then Mr. Mitchell appeared. What did he do? He told them to stop. He said he'd called police and they should leave before they got arrested. But Marcus pulled a knife, said he'd kill Mr. Mitchell too if he didn't walk away. Rebecca looked at James. Mr. Mitchell didn't walk away. And what happened next? He moved so fast I barely saw it. He took the knife from Marcus, put him on the ground, then dealt with the other 2 men. It was over in seconds. And then he stayed with me, held pressure on my wounds, talked to me until the ambulance arrived. He saved my life. Richardson approached the witness stand. Ms. Santos, the prosecutor, argued that Mr. Mitchell used excessive force. Do you believe that? No, those men were trying to kill me. Mr. Mitchell used exactly the force necessary to stop them. If he'd used less, I'd be dead. Thank you. No further questions. Judge Morrison looked at the prosecution table where a substitute attorney sat looking overwhelmed. Does the government wish to cross-examine? No, Your Honor. Next came Warden Morrison, who testified about the yard fight, about James's restraint, about the precision with which he'd neutralized 6 attackers without causing permanent injury. In my 30 years running prisons, I've never seen violence that controlled. Commander Mitchell could have killed those men easily. He chose not to. That's not evidence of someone dangerous. That's evidence of someone with extraordinary discipline. Then Colonel Hayes, who presented declassified summaries of James's operations. Commander Mitchell conducted 47 missions, where he had authorization to use lethal force. In 32 of those missions, he chose alternative methods: negotiation, de-escalation, minimum necessary force. His record demonstrates a pattern of choosing restraint even under extreme stress. Then Officer Martinez, who described the ambush attempt that morning. Commander Mitchell was chained and helpless, but he still managed to save my life. Threw himself between me and gunfire despite the chains preventing him from protecting himself. That's not the action of someone violent and unstable. That's heroism. Richardson presented evidence of jury tampering, the foreman's anti-veteran bias, the court-appointed attorney's apparent cooperation with Brennan. Finally, juror number 7, Patricia Chen, who testified through tears. I wanted to vote not guilty. I believed Mr. Mitchell acted in defense of Ms. Santos, but the foreman convinced us that military veterans with combat experience couldn't be trusted, that they were dangerous. I let that prejudice override my judgment. I'm so sorry. Throughout all of this, James sat silent, watching his life dissected, watching people sacrifice their privacy and safety to fight for him, watching Sarah hold Tyler and explain in whispers what the lawyers were saying. At 11:30, Judge Morrison called a recess. We'll reconvene at 1 p.m. for closing arguments and my decision. Richardson grabbed James's arm. We're winning. Everything's going our way. The evidence is overwhelming. But James couldn't celebrate. Not while Michael Brennan was somewhere in the building detained and angry. Not while Kovacs was back at Ridgemont plotting revenge. Not while his family sat in a courtroom hoping for something that still might not happen. Martinez approached during the break. Cole police found the SUVs from this morning, registered to a shell company linked to Kovac's outside contacts. They're treating it as attempted murder conspiracy. Kovac is looking at federal charges on top of everything else. How does he keep coordinating this from administrative segregation? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Martinez's radio crackled. Hold on. He listened, his face going pale. We've got a situation at Ridgemont. Riot in cell block C. Multiple guards down inmates have taken control. James felt his stomach drop. Kovac has to be. He's orchestrating something from inside. But why now during your hearing? Hayes appeared, her phone to her ear, expression grim. Commander, there's been a development. Kovac sent a message through his lawyer. Says if you get released today, he'll make sure the riot ends with dead guards. But if the judge denies clemency, if you go back to Ridgemont, he calls it off. He's using guards as hostages to keep me in prison. Looks that way. Richardson was already on his phone calling someone. Your Honor needs to know about this immediately. This is extortion terrorism. Kovac is proving exactly why Mitchell needs protection through release, not continued incarceration. Sarah appeared at James's side, Tyler's hand in hers. Dad, what's happening? Why are people saying there's a riot? James knelt so he was eye level with Tyler. Hey, buddy, Grandpa's got some bad people trying to cause trouble, but it's going to be okay. Are you coming home today? James looked into his grandson's eyes and couldn't lie. I don't know, Tyler. I'm trying. I made you a drawing. Tyler pulled a folded paper from his pocket. It's you and me fishing like you promised. James took the drawing, unfolded it with shaking hands. Stick figures beside a blue lake sun overhead, smiles on both faces. In Tyler's 6-year-old handwriting, I love you, Grandpa. James pulled him into a hug, felt Sarah's arms wrap around both of them, and for just a moment pretended they were anywhere but a federal courthouse waiting for a judge to decide their future. At 1 p.m., they reconvened. Judge Morrison looked tired, the weight of the decision evident in her expression. I've heard extensive testimony, I've reviewed mountains of evidence, and I've considered the law both as written and as it should be applied to cases like this. She paused. Commander Mitchell, stand, please. James stood, his legs somehow steady, despite his heart trying to break through his ribs. Commander, this court has rarely seen a case so tainted by misconduct. Prosecutorial conflict of interest, jury bias, ineffective defense counsel, witness intimidation, attempted murder to prevent testimony. The list is staggering. Judge Morrison's voice hardened. What happened to you is a travesty of justice. James felt hope flare, but didn't let himself believe it yet. However, I'm also aware of the riot currently underway at Ridgemont and the hostage situation Kovacs has created specifically to influence this hearing, and I will not allow a violent criminal to dictate the outcome of legal proceedings through terrorism. Sarah grabbed James's hand, squeezed so hard he thought bones might break. Therefore, I am granting your clemency petition effective immediately. Your sentence is commuted to time served. All conditions of supervised release are waived given the extraordinary circumstances. Commander Mitchell, you're free to go. The courtroom exploded. Veterans were cheering. Sarah was sobbing. Tyler was asking what happened. Rebecca. Santos was hugging her daughters. Richardson was shaking hands with everyone nearby. But Judge Morrison wasn't done. Furthermore, I'm ordering a full investigation into the original prosecution, the jury selection, and every aspect of this case. I'm recommending that the District Attorney's Office review all cases prosecuted by Michael Brennan for potential misconduct. And I'm issuing a bench warrant for Ryan Kovacs on federal terrorism charges related to today's riot. She looked directly at James. Commander, you served this country for 20 years. You saved lives in combat and continued saving lives when you came home. You did nothing wrong on the night of March 15, 2023. The system failed you. I'm sorry it took this long to correct that failure. James couldn't speak. He just nodded, trying to process that after 7 weeks after the trial and the conviction and the prison yard fight and the ambush and everything else, it was over. He was free. Guards removed the last of his restraints, and Sarah was there immediately, Tyler between them, all three holding on like they'd never let go. "Dad, you're coming home," Sarah kept saying. "You're really coming home." Tyler looked up at him. "Can we go fishing now, Grandpa?" James laughed, a sound he hadn't made in 7 weeks, a sound that felt like resurrection. "Yeah, buddy, we can go fishing." Rebecca approached, tears streaming down her face. "Mr. Mitchell, I don't know how to thank you." "You just did, Rebecca. You testified when they threatened you. You fought for me when you didn't have to. We saved each other." Hayes appeared official and composed, but with moisture in her eyes. "Commander, there's a car waiting. Security detail will escort you home. Make sure Kovacs' people don't try anything." "What about the riot?" "FBI's handling it. Kovacs made a tactical error. The moment he used guards as leverage to influence a federal hearing, he escalated from state charges to federal terrorism. He's looking at life in a maximum security facility, probably ADX Florence, where he'll spend 23 hours a day in solitary." "Good." Outside the courthouse, news cameras captured everything. James walking out a free man, Sarah and Tyler beside him, veterans forming an honor guard, Rebecca Santos, waving as they drove away. The drive to Sarah's house took 4 hours, and James spent most of it with Tyler in his lap, telling stories about fishing trips they'd take, teaching him about patience and nature, and the way sunlight looked on water early in the morning when the world was still quiet. Sarah drove, glancing in the rearview mirror every few minutes like she couldn't quite believe James was really there. "Dad, what happens now? Now we live. We spend time together. We heal. What about Kovacs? What if he sends people after you, even from prison?" "He won't. Federal terrorism charges mean he loses all privileges, all outside contact. He's done." They pulled into Sarah's driveway just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in colors Angela would have loved. Tyler dragged James inside to show him his room, his toys, his drawings, everything he'd done in the 7 weeks James was gone. That night, after Tyler finally fell asleep, clutching James's hand, Sarah and James sat on the back porch, drinking coffee that didn't taste like punishment. "I thought I lost you," Sarah said quietly. "When Colonel Hayes called about the ambush, when she said people were shooting at your transport, I thought that was it. I thought you'd survive the trial just to die on the way to the hearing. I'm harder to kill than that baby girl. I know, but you shouldn't have to be." She looked at him. "What are you going to do now? You're 42, you've got your whole life ahead of you. Are you going to work with Hayes on veteran justice issues? Are you going to write a book? What?" James thought about the question about futures he'd stopped allowing himself to imagine during 7 weeks when tomorrow was never guaranteed. "I'm going to teach Tyler to fish. I'm going to help you however you need. I'm going to live quietly and peacefully and never take another day of freedom for granted. That's it. After everything you've been through, you just want quiet. Sarah, I spent 20 years in war zones. I spent 7 weeks in prison. I've had enough excitement for one lifetime. Quiet sounds like paradise. His phone buzzed. Text from Torres. Commander, 40 of us are organizing a fund for Rebecca Santos, setting up college funds for her daughters, paying off her mortgage, making sure she never has to worry about money again. Figure it's the least we can do for someone who fought as hard as she did. James texted back. Count me in for whatever you need. Another text, this one from Richardson. Commander, 3 networks want interviews. Book publishers are calling. You're going to be famous whether you want it or not. James turned off his phone. Sarah laughed. You can't hide forever. Watch me. 3 months later, James stood knee-deep in a Colorado river teaching Tyler how to cast a fishing line. The boy was terrible at it, tangling the line more often than not, but his laughter made every frustration worthwhile. Sarah sat on the riverbank, reading, occasionally looking up to take photos she'd probably never share, but would treasure forever. Michael Brennan had been disbarred, was facing criminal charges for prosecutorial misconduct in 17 cases, including James's. Kovac was in ADX Florence, serving life without parole for terrorism, murder, and conspiracy. The Ridgemont riot had ended with minimal casualties after FBI intervention. Rebecca Santos had testified before Congress about witness intimidation and criminal justice reform, had become an advocate for assault. Survivors had started a foundation that helped women escape violent situations. Colonel Hayes had been promoted, was working directly with the Secretary of Defense on programs that helped veterans transition to civilian life, that prevented situations like James's from happening to others. And James Mitchell, former Delta Force commander, freed prisoner, was teaching his grandson that patience mattered more than catching fish, that the time spent together was the whole point. Grandpa, I think I got one. James moved closer, helped Tyler reel in a small trout that they'd release back into the water after Tyler got a good look at it. You did great, buddy. Can we come back tomorrow? We can come back whenever you want. I'm not going anywhere. Tyler smiled, and in that smile, James saw Angela's eyes, saw Sarah's determination, saw the future he'd fought so hard to reach. He'd saved Rebecca Santos in a Denver alley and gone to prison for it. He'd fought 6 gang members in a prison yard and nearly died for it. He'd endured 7 weeks of hell and came out the other side, changed but not broken. And now he stood in a Colorado river, teaching his grandson to fish free and alive, and exactly where he was supposed to be. Justice had taken its time arriving, had nearly failed completely, but it had come eventually. Not because the system worked perfectly, but because good people had fought to make it work. Rebecca testifying despite threats. Hayes refusing to give up. Martinez documenting everything. Richardson taking the case. Judge Morrison having the courage to overturn a jury verdict. Justice wasn't automatic. It was hard-won, fought for, demanded by people who refused to accept that doing the right thing should be punished. James Mitchell had learned that lesson in 20 years of military service, had it reinforced in 7 weeks of wrongful imprisonment, and would spend the rest of his life teaching it to his grandson. Not through words, but through actions. Through standing up for what's right, even when it costs everything. Through protecting those who can't protect themselves. Through being the kind of man who doesn't walk past someone in need, even when helping means risking freedom, safety, life itself. Because that's what principles meant. That's what honor demanded. That's what Tyler needed to learn. And as the Colorado sun set over the river, painting the water in shades of gold and amber, James Mitchell smiled and knew with absolute certainty that every choice he'd made, every consequence he'd endured, every moment of suffering and doubt and fear had been worth it to stand here now free and whole and home.